then we put away money out of the local fee. Okay, and we managed to reserve, so each year, there was at least enough liquid assets to pay what we had to pay, because we didn't want to have no liquid assets
calendar?
short, so we had to potentially
Yeah.
sell some of it off at a
Start
loss.
with that, I guess.
We used to make a plan to do that stuff if markets had changed. Somewhere in the area of about 6 or 7%. Total. But what we did is we said in essence that we don't want to go to.
How are you?
We want to have
See you? Good. How are you? Looking good?
ready.
Yeah. Lots of weight.
But the one thing that a lot of them do is you talk to the auditors. The auditors will tell you,
And also,
if you have information that you're going to have if there's something you haven't already preserved for, you have to
this is
preserve
February,
it.
when you go down south and figure it out.
And the risk-
You know, March is the.
Between our budget meetings now, we're in San Diego.
Yeah, that's what it is. How they how they're going to spread it out. and how it's-
It's fine, I'm looking a little more forward to this. Don't know. It's not overwhelming, it's a lot of planning.
There's so much to do there.
I don't know how they're going to do it.
Yeah. Funny
I
like
thought I had
the
the right pages, but I want to see. Oh, no, yeah, this is helpful.
Let's say 6
This is
o'clock.
just the guide.
5:59, okay.
I like a great deal.
You can hit me with it.
Very well. Kristen Hall, Magic 8 Ball. Jewel. Sometimes style, make those sacrifices. There you go.
Okay, I think it's going to turn to 6 o'clock any second now. Okay, the annual town budget hearing for the selectmen's budget is called to order at 6 o'clock. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this is a hearing on the Board of Selectmen's budget. It will be interactive with the audience, unlike a meeting where we'll have public comments at the beginning. We're going to do an interactive thing if people want to make comments as we go along. The copy of the budget is available on the table if you want one. We're going to talk about, see, in public speaking, you're supposed to tell them what you're going to do it, and then tell them what you did. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the schedule of meetings, how the budget is created. We're going to talk about the budget itself. We're going to get a sneak peek at the Board of Finance's responsibility to develop with the treasurer a revenue portion. And then we're going to look at a very, very, very tentative mill rate, which at the moment includes the budget as presented, the revenues as estimated by the treasurer, and the school budget as currently constructed, the superintendent's school budget, not voted on by the board. So the mill rate you see here will be exceptionally tentative with many moving parts. Dan isn't here, okay. We have the meeting process, and Dan has the dates. He's going to project them for us in a few minutes. The budget is budget requests are presented to the first selectman by December 1st. And by the treasurer works on with the department heads to put together the packet which you have, gives it to the Board of Selectmen, I think by January 1st, I think it is. And then the Board of Selectmen works on it until February 15th, when they turn it over to the Board of Finance. Part of that process is department head hearings. The department heads have met with the Board of Selectmen at a series of meetings last month. And Board of Finance members were invited, as they typically are, to listen to and ask questions of the department heads. That saves a lot of duplication. Then the Board of Finance is going to meet tonight after this hearing and talk about budget revenues, talk about our concerns and questions. There's an opportunity, according to the charter, for department heads to meet with the Board of Finance if they want to talk about their budget. Board of Finance members may have questions beyond what they feel is a full and complete answer from the treasurer or the first selectman, and department heads are welcome to come to the Board of Finance and talk about their budget. Then the Board of Finance will have, there's a lot of dates, and I've got to do them from memory. We'll get it up on the board in a few minutes. We will then meet with the board we will then develop what we want to do. Then we will have a meeting of our own, a special meeting where we will vote on a budget. We always invite the Board of Selectmen to that meeting because they need money to run the town. We give great deference to what they want and what they think. Then after that, we'll have another hearing, which is new in the charter, after the Board of Finance decides what it wants to do. And then there'll be a vote. Dan's working on it. Okay. Well, we'll look at those dates in a few minutes. Let's go to this packet, which everyone has an opportunity, and it'll be on the most of it will be on the board, up on the screen. The first dozen or so pages of this packet is a document called Financing Southbury. And we're not going to go through it page by page. This is for your reading. This is the concept about how this budget is constructed, how we go about doing it. So, John, why don't we go, boy, this couldn't be any smaller, could it? Oh, there you go. Whew. I don't know which is smaller, the one I'm looking at there or the one I'm looking at here. I did get as part of the public hearing process, I did get an email from a citizen, Mr. Fred Sell, and I've shared it with some of the members of the Board of Finance. Mr. Sell asked it to be read as part of the public input, and I'm going to do that. And I responded to him, and I will share my response, which we're all going to talk about later. He says, John, I will be out of town and unable to attend the Board of Finance public hearing tomorrow evening on the proposed budget. In my absence, please accept for the public record and distribute to the board members the attached submission that highlights the need for an explanatory executive summary to be included and posted with the final proposed budget that concisely outlines 3 bullet points: where the money is being spent, why expenditures are increasing, and why our taxes are going up. Such a summary will increase public understanding of the fiscal challenges both us before us, and increase the likelihood of voter approval of the board's hard work. Then I wrote him back. Oh, Fred, I will give an executive summary a shot. Such a summary would be a characterization on my part, the summary, depending on what they want to emphasize. Close to the guideline is currently at 5 points, almost $1 million in school at the meeting, and and I will put it out as a,
If I could just
Sure.
interject something quickly. Rates down from 12% to 9.5 based upon that negotiation with the insurance company.
thank you,
Can you give me answers? Hold on, I'll give it. I'll bring it up right now, John.
negotiating that Dan and C, we're looking at a 6.6? 6.26%, and the town 4%.
We just had it. I just had it, John. If you-
Could you, John, could you turn your mic on and put it close?
And it's the same net worth.
Rates down.
Thank you.
So this will combine.
And the school budget as presented by the students in the school system than the average daily membership. And because our ADM this year is greater than it was live, we're going to be John, could you make that bigger again? So maybe it's just me that needs it. So I'm going to work backwards using this chart for John. You're going to have to keep making it big, and our biggest at $1.8 million is a reduction. Mr. Chairman, that this reduction will hold its roads to be worked on with town monies, $4 or $5 million worth of road and bridge projects. I think even more than that. And those are going to be folded in over the next 2 or 3 years with this 1.8 million for next year. Above that, we have next the reserve funds and debt. And that number is going up, that's going up 6.9%. We have all our vehicles, all our heavy equipment. There's about a dozen different reserves, and they have a built-in allocation each year to fund them. And they are going up they're going up, what, $1.3 million, I think it is? Excuse me, $131,000. Then we get into the guts of the expenditures themselves. The total operating expenses from the Board of Selectmen is an increase of 3.79. Now this is, Dan, is this got the new thing in it, this one?
This does, John, yes.
Okay, so the operating expenses are going to go up 3.79%. Why, how am I going to read this? I don't know. Hold it close.
Just be helpful if I give you my tablet and you can
Oh, my
expand it
God.
and shrink it and do what you need
Oh,
to.
you are a wonderful person. Thank you. When you get old, you need help. Oh, you go left and right and everything, okay. The section above that is the other contingency and refunds. There is zero increase in there. We've got money, things happen, so we need a contingency. Sometimes people send us too much money to the tax collector, and we have to give them refunds. And they will be whatever they are. Sometimes they're more than this, sometimes they're less. There is absolutely no way to know what that's going to be. We then have a section called Public Works. It's nice to see that the whole Public Works Department is down 1.37%, which is fabulous to know. That includes town properties inside, town properties outside, solid waste, and energy, and the highway department itself. And those all are, at the very least, modest increases, and if you can see those numbers. Above that is community activities, the senior citizens, public buildings, the library, the recreation department, and others. small. And those functions as a whole are increasing 4.1%, with the largest one being Parks and Rec. Now, the Parks and Rec is as large as it is because they are hosting more programs planned than last year. But the nice thing is, on the revenue side, those extra costs are fully funded by revenues. So, Dan, could we characterize the Parks and Rec budget if we could subtract the revenues last year and this year from the expenses easily? Is it in the area of 2-3% net increase after balancing revenues? I remember some low number like that. Why don't you work on that, and I'll keep going. How's that?
It's about 2.25%.
2.25%. Okay, so the fundamental Parks and Rec program before adding the wash of additional activities is 2.5%. The senior department, 3.7%. That increase, I believe, is because we're adding another half-time person to the budget.
This increase is for we are raising the drivers' rates to be competitive with other towns.
It's the other department that's the half-time.
This department does have a half-time, but the money that's currently in the budget is enough to cover the half-time person, so this is just the
Okay,
increase
so
in the drivers.
The adjusted budget for this year makes the increase for the person who's coming for the rest of this year and next year included, so there's no budget increase. Okay, thank you. This is really helpful, Vivian, thank you. This is fabulous. We then have a series of public health departments. You have the Conservation Commission, and that whopping 14% increase is $2,000 because of, I think they're using weeding. They're doing more weeding, is it?
They're doing more treatment to like
Water
J.D. Pierce
treatment
and things like
this
that.
year. So the percentage is very large, but the number is very small. The Pomperaug River watershed, a $2,000 increase, 4%. And the health district is a 4%, $8,000 increase. They presented their budget. I'm not remembering the focus of that. Can you remember what there was a, Tim, do you remember what the watershed, they had an increase with, they went from 40,000 to 48,000, something like that.
I can.
You're right. I'm saying one thing and thinking something else. The health district increase for their budget on a per capita basis is about 3%. Our population increased in Southbury, so applying a 3% increase in the thing called per capita, because we have more people, we have a larger increase this year than just their budget itself. The next section is on general government. We have our fire department at 5%, our communications department at $44,000, almost 9%, and that's because I think the only full-time addition of a person in the whole budget is a person in dispatch.
That's correct.
The police chief, who's responsible for the dispatch function, explained that in detail, and it would certainly seem the Board of Selectmen has bought into it. Emergency management, a minus. Fire marshal, a minus. No change in the tree warden. Animal control, 3%, and a reduction in emergency services. The next section we're going to is the general government, and we have the probate court where we get a per capita charge from our population relative to the total probate budget. Our elections, folks, 3% increase, in spite of the chaos that has been forced on us with mail-in voting and early hours, et cetera. They've able to come in with a 3% increase. Board of Finance, a 5% increase. Our auditors need a little more money. And we're going to be going out to, probably going out to public bid on that. And this is our estimate of what the results of that RFP for auditing services will be. Board of Assessment Appeals, minus $700. The fiscal office, 1.7%. The tax collectors, 1.4%. The assessor, minus 0.6%. Town clerks, minus 2%. This is pretty good stuff. The building department, plus 1%. Insurance, this is one of the problems our government is facing, is not only is health insurance becoming extremely expensive, the property casualty insurance all across the country and in Southbury is going up significantly. And we have an 8% or $71,000. That is one of the larger increases. We have an insurance committee that Mr. Riley and myself, and now Mr. Giacomi will be joining us, and we'll be meeting with the insurance agents and to talk about this. Legal is even at 130. We don't know how much we're going to spend on legal. Every year, this is a guess. It could be 100 or it could be 200. Depends on what happens. But this is the best guess, and we have a contingency that'll cover it if there's overages, so we're leaving it where it is. Planning department, 2%. Wetlands, virtually no change. Zoning, no change. Minus $70 for zoning board of appeals. And economic development, minus $700. The next section is the pension section. The town has a pension system. Our road crew are in the Teamsters pension. Our police have their own pension. And for town employees, we have a pension system that is closed, no new people, and a 457B, I think it's called, sort of like a 401k for municipal employees. And one of the things we've been able to do is hold the expense on the pension fairly steady and or reduce it. One, because we've had some fabulous market performance the last few years. Also this year, we're changing an actuarial assumption to continue to be extremely conservative, but more in line with the pension actuary's recommendation about how soon we should amortize. Sorry about this, guys. How soon we should amortize past service. We're 95% funded. We're one of the.
We are 95% funded with a 6.25% discount rate, which is very conservative in comparison to other municipalities in the state.
Our actuaries tell us we are in the top 10% of the state when it comes to our funding percentage, in spite of the fact that we have an exceptionally conservative estimate on how much money we're going to earn. This year, we were able to lower that a little by $57,000. We then get to a bunch of general government stuff. The Board of Selectmen wants $700 more. For services, $700 more. Miscellaneous expenses down $8,000. Our committee expenses up $3,000. The large one is labor. It's up $495,000, which is a huge increase. That is almost entirely because of health insurance costs. Almost entirely. I think we have, about 100 people on the health plan, and about 2/3 of them are on the family plan, and a family plan costs $42,000?
It's a little bit more than that, about 43.5.
$43,000 for a family plan. And there's no end in sight for those escalations, as you've read and heard about it in the press. It's all over.
And also contractually with the Teamsters, everyone that's on the Teamsters plan has to be listed as a family.
So, we have challenged our insurance agent to help the town figure out how we can maintain quality benefits for our people and somehow provide incentives which would lower the total cost to the taxpayers. That is not a simple assignment, but we are working on it. So that is the summary of all the different departments. We end up with a 6.2, you gotta make it bigger again for me, John, if you would. Again, we got a 6 little bit to the right. So the increase of local government is 3.64. Those are all the line items I just went through. Again, the tentative superintendent's budget after the ADM shift against Southbury, 7.28, and the total increase of 6.22 in spending. Okay, now let's go to the next slide. Let's see. Okay, let's.
You want to go to you, John?
Let's go to the next one. Okay, this one you're going to have to make a little bigger, and bigger yet. Okay, this is the undesignated fund balance. Money comes into the town, money goes out, and it all goes through the general fund. Items that are not specifically designated for something in accordance to some GAAP rules go through the undesignated fund. We started the year with this much money. What's that, $9 million? Oh, we should share that the state and the state government says a town like ours should have a general fund, which for us is the undesignated fund balance, and the rainy day fund of about 15 to 20%. And we've got a long way to go till we get to that. So this 9 million, while it's a big number, it pales in comparison with our $89 million budget. So there are some earmarks, we call them, money that in prior years has been set aside to be used for these special purposes. We've got fire department vehicles for inflation. We're going to need $400,000 more than we had put away in the reserve fund for that. Our bridge reserve, our 20-year bridge reserve, in order to keep the annual funding of that smooth, we're going to need a one-time pop this year of $450,000. Last year, the fire department told us that OSHA and the National NFPA or some organization required new rules for how often fire department turnout gear has to be changed. Every fireman needs 2 sets of turnout gear. One cannot be more than 5 years old. The second cannot be more than 10 years old. That's a new requirement. We've got 60 volunteer firemen to outfit. An outfit of a set of gear costs $7,000. You do the math. So we've got a multi-year plan to fund that. We also have, in this fund was FEMA money, which we received for all the flood damage. The governmental accounting requires it to go through the general fund, but it needs to go out again to the debt service FEMA master plan we have. So we have to take that out of the 9 million because that's really not money we can do anything with. It's already spoken for elsewhere. We then have the operations for this year. What are we looking at? We're looking at, we received this year $1.7 million from FEMA. So that's going in and it's gonna come out. That's the going in part. The going out part is down here. We're probably estimating our revenues to be $400,000 more than we had budgeted. We're estimating our expenses to be $480,000 less. And we know we're gonna get the tree settlement, which the town recently negotiated with the insurance company and the people who cut down the trees. So that 2%, Dan, does that include the FEMA? Or is that just the 400
That does not,
and the
that's, the
400?
FEMA's outside of that, John.
Say again?
The FEMA's outside of that, that's
Yeah.
just what we're anticipating
So-
without FEMA.
We're running about a 2% surplus on our total government, total local government. Then we come down to this year, and we need to earmark some of the $8 million which is left. And this is all the Board of Finance. This is a peek of what the Board of Finance is going to be addressing. Dan and I put this together, and we'll see how it goes. In order to maintain our rainy day fund over here at 7.98%, which is what the Board of Finance voted some 10 years ago of the total budget, we're going to have to take $400,000 out of this unassigned fund and put it in the official rainy day fund. The pension fund, we keep the pension cost in the annual budget steady by taking a lot of the fluctuations in what the actuaries say we have to put in the fund each year. We take that out of the unassigned fund. We then have the Southbury Ambulance Service deferred budget support for their operations. That's $250,000, which is both for their capital and for their operating costs. We'll polish that a little when the Board of Finance gets to the Ambulance Association request for capital money, because that's just too long a story to explain unless someone wants me to. The debt service plan for FEMA, the Board of Finance recommended to the Board of Selectmen a basis for borrowing $8.5 million to take care of all the flood damage. It's got a lot of moving parts in it, and one of them is over time, I think it was 4 years, we're going to need $800,000 from the general fund to finish the road work that needs to be done. FEMA has told us that when we go to fix a road, they tell us to what extent we're allowed to fix it. Our road people and the First Selectman and the Road Committee have determined that that doesn't make sense. As long as we're there fixing the road, we might as well fix it right. And in order to make fixing the roads that we're going to fix right, we're going to need another $822,000. Also, when you look at the road program for the next, I think is it 5 years, that's solid?
5
The
years.
next 5 years, we're going to be doing Main Street. And what is it? This Main Street is one. Is this, yeah, this is the Main Street. And then there's another big one. There are two of them that are very large, and it's a real bump in what we need to do. So in order to, John will get that back. John, I think we lost it.
I was going to bring up the road budget, John, but I can bring
Dan,
it back.
oh, Dan, I'm sorry. In order to smooth out the road program, so that, remember the $1.8 million on the road program? In order to keep us in that ballpark and not going up to $2.5 million in 1 year, which would wreak havoc with a mill rate, we're recommending earmarking 750,000 for those road projects. And then lastly, the FEMA money, which we got in up here, it doesn't belong to us to do with what we want. We've got to use it for this FEMA debt service stuff. Okay, so when that's all said and done, we end up with an undesignated fund balance available for future use of $4,300,000. Last year, we applied to the budget $1.7 million. We applied to the budget $1.7 million out of this fund. With this much, $4.3 million, our plan is to apply next year and the year after and the year after and the year after these amounts to the budget as revenues. And you'll see by some magic that Dan worked out, every year that is $435,000 less than the prior year, which means the taxes are going to have to go up about 0.2 of a mil to cover this shortfall. But if we take more, then next year we'll have a bigger shortfall. So this is which will have to be made up in taxes. So there's a balancing act the Board of Finance executes when we allocate the undesignated fund after all the reserves and earmarks have been taken care of. So now let's go back to the prior sheet, let's see, which is the mill rate. Okay, Dan, can you make it a little bigger for us? Okay. We have a grand list of $2,916,000,000. We need to raise this amount of money from taxes. We have some credits against the mill rate for veterans and seniors. So we have an effective need to raise this much money in a mill rate calculation because we're not going to get money from these exemptions. So when you do the math, a 99.4% collection rate, which is, let's see, we're ranging between 99.4, 99.8, and goes up
roughly.
and down?
Yep.
Something like that. We're conservatively estimating a 99.4%, which would leave us with a 25.7 mill rate against this year, or an increase of 1.51 mils, or I think on the right, Dan, there's a percentage that shows.
It's not on this sheet, but I can bring
It's
it up.
not on
John,
this
if you want.
sheet.
Want me to
So
bring it up?
it'd be a 1%, let's see, that's about a 4%.
I'll bring it up.
He has another sheet which covers that. Over here, what's that say?
6.27.
Okay. That is what what is it, 6.27?
6.27.
6.27. Now that's with a 7%, well, you saw the expenses, 3.6 for the town, 7 point
0.28.
something for the school, and an allocation from revenues. Can we go to the revenue sheet? I think, John, do you have that one?
I have it, John, here.
Or do you have it, Dan? There it is, okay, nice and big, okay. The, there is the amount of money that we need to get from taxes, which was built into that last calculation. And these are all the various revenue estimates that Dan has put together. You'll notice the $1.742 million from the undesignated fund, which we just went through in detail. The school ESC grant is going to be $8.3 million. This is money that when the state figured out that they're going to give money to the towns for their schools, they forgot to consider the fact that there are regional school districts. So rather than send the money to the regional school district, they send it to the town. And we include it as a revenue. Whether metaphysically you want to do some calculations and include that against the school budget, and you can do that if you choose, but this is the way the state government says we need to do it. Luckily, you'll see that between the $8.3 million and the $8.1 million for this year, we've got an increase. There were 7 or 14, 7 towns in the state that got more, and most of them got less. And we got more because we're getting about 45% of what we're supposed to get. We have been getting half of what the statute says we're supposed to get for decades. So finally, they're starting to true that up. We're all going to be taking a dirt nap if they keep this up at this rate, by the time we get our fair share. But at least we're getting $200,000 more, not $200,000 less. So we have all these revenues. I can go through each one, and Dan and I can talk about them if you want. So that's the town, the cost of local government, the town budget. That's an explanation of the school budget. And it's a shot at the revenues, and it's a shot at the mill rate, given all the tentative stuff we currently are dealing with. So I think now would be a good time to ask the public if they have any questions. This is your hearing. We get to listen to you and answer your questions. If you don't have any, we're going to adjourn and we'll do our meeting. But we have the first selectman's here. Oh, yes.
Questions?
Sure, go ahead and ask a question or a comment, either.
Okay.
I think you should probably come up here so the people in the ether space here can hear your question.
Fortunately, I'm talking about the first two, or just the first paragraph of your consolidated budget. It's the third and fourth line down, department name, other, and committee. So the other section, the budget lines are professional services. And it's meant to fund the services of a part-time, highly qualified consultant to the Economic Development Committee as a substitute for a full-time Economic Development Director. I know Deidre Sullivan. She has had a decades-long career in marketing with a focus on product development, partnerships, loyalty, and sales, including 10 years with MasterCard, 8 years with ITT Sheraton Hotel Headquarters, and 6 years with Carlson Marketing. What I prefer is that both this department, other, and the committee have, well, Other is a decrease of 11%, $10,000, while the committee has an additional $3,000. And that seems short-sighted to me. You're talking about one day preceded by months of similar celebrations during America 250 versus 1 year investing a greater percentage of funds in the past than the future. The grand list has been flat for the past year. With recent zoning and planning commission approval of the new planned Development District 24, providing for mixed-use housing at 333 Main Street South, you have a template for increasing the commercial and residential grand list all along Main Street South. Deidre Sullivan's marketing experience, supplementing the focus of the Economic Development Commission, can ensure that there will be significant improvement of the grand list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you leave that there? So that we can have it. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you for that comment. The professional services line that's in this is outside of the EDC. The EDC line is separate. There's a $25,985 in the economic development line. That's where the funding of that position would come from. This line of professional services is for the first selectman, so he can go out and do engineering studies and things like that. So the funding is still in the economic development line. It's just this line, the Board of Selectmen decided historically, if you look at it, the first selectman never spent the full $90,000, so they decided to reduce it $10,000 this year. There's still money in the budget under the economic development department for that position, yes.
Are there, yes, you have a question? Sure.
My comment has not to do with previous comment.
Okay.
I'm apologizing for coming in late, but I wanted to know what you all decided, if you put it in the budget, about the food scrap recycling at our transfer station, especially because I was listening to the Assembly Environmental Committee meeting in our state level this past Friday, and there is a bill, 5524, that if several people came to the podium or zoomed in to encourage this on a state level, an act concerning the state's materials management system. And it has to do with separating food scraps from, and how it can reduce the cost of our carting off our trash. And it also it has like 3 pieces. That seems to be the major part. And the second part is about reducing single-use plastics. And the third part was banning polystyrene outright by any food operation.
Yeah, that's a really great
Is that in
point.
our budget?
And you're correct, food scraps is a major part of our weight of our MSW. We did, based upon the recommendation of Sustainable Southbury and the Board of Selectmen, we put $8,000, which is the cost that Sustainable Southbury had given us that they had spent last year for the food scraps program. So that is in our budget for this year.
I'm really grateful. Thank you. My name's Jennifer Romania.
Okay, are there any other questions? Would anyone else from the public like to be heard? Yes, Mr. Riley?
May I make a comment as a member of the public?
It's unusual,
here?
but sure, why not?
Okay.
We're,
I just have a concern regarding the health district budget. Okay, many years ago, before we had the region, the town had its own health district. And as a resident here, I was getting frequent communications from the health district about services that were available to Southbury residents. Especially, you could go right here in town to the health district office and get your inoculations and so forth and so on. Once we moved to the regional health district, those communications ceased completely. So my question is, when we look at the health district budget, are we comparing the cost that is based simply on population, or are we looking at the services that they actually provide to Southbury residents out of that pot? Okay, and I think we need to look at that and say, you know, and my concern is there used to be communications with people in Southbury consistently about inoculations and other services available right here. That communication has stopped. And I'm just asking that maybe we take a look at that and say, are we getting our fair share of services in return for paying a fair share based on population of the number of residents that are served?
I know the Health District did a presentation, I think, to the Board of Selectmen. I happen to be on that board, and I do know that they try to communicate, but absent sending an email to everyone who registers with them to receive the monthly reports and all those notices, I think the rubric is you need to go on their health site and everything is there. So I guess we will take that back as a comment. Okay, we will do that.
Because they actually schedule inoculation days at the local health district office instead of you having to go to a doctor or something like that to get them.
Yeah, we did question them when they did give their presentation, John, and they still maintain those inoculations. They're at our senior center on a monthly basis, and they also have an office here in town, so they're available. I think the services have increased with increase in the sanitarian, and the lag time a couple years ago that we had was based on not having the additional sanitarian, so it looks like they're doing fine.
Okay, thank you.
We'll get back to you, John, about how they do it, and maybe some suggestions of how it might be improved. Okay, well, I guess we're done with public comment. It is, wow, 6 minutes. Come on in. To the hearing, budget hearing, or the Board of Finance meeting?
The budget hearing.
Come on in quickly. You made it within the nick of time, Judy.
Thank you.
What would you like to say? What would you like to, what's your comment?
To start with, for those of you
Close.
that may not know me, I'm Judy Katzmark, 646B Heritage Village. Well, there's an interesting face. I am also chair of your senior commission, and one of those elderly people. I was driving over and I thought, I've now lived in Southbury longer than any other place I've lived in the country. It's been 20 years that I've been involved in this town, almost frightening. So I want to thank you for, to start with, putting Friday back in our schedule, and recently, both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance have stepped up and funded that position so that we can have it for the support of all of the rest of us elderly people. So I wanted to come up and publicly thank you for your support of us here in Southbury.
Thank you, Judy, also.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, I think it now is appropriate to close this hearing. So the hearing is closed. We're going to start a Board of Finance meeting in about 2 minutes at 7 o'clock. 4 minutes. And you're more than welcome to stay or leave, your choice. If I remember, Dan, I think technically, the Board of Finance meeting is supposed to start after the hearing, correct? So we don't have to wait till 7 o'clock? Oh, okay. Well, then-
Here goes.
Vivian, thank you so much. That was,
I can't see it either,
yeah.
bring these things up.
Okay, the Southbury Board of Finance regular monthly meeting for March is called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. John, could you put the agenda up, please? I think we have all our regular members here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
I gotta move this over for Jack, all right?
Who are we missing? Oh, okay. Tom, no, we're missing, all our regular members are here, so we don't have to seat alternates. Our first order of business would be the approval of the minutes for our last meeting. They were sent out. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? There's a second. Further discussion, additions or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor, please by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, so ordered. I think the next item is our assessor. Our assessor is here to talk about the grand list.
Hey, John, can you take me out of that, put you on as a
Aren't I here for you, John? Aren't I here for you? No?
Yeah, the Board of Finance meeting, yes, well, I asked you to come, thank you.
Yes. So, Darcel, I'm the assessor here in Southbury, and although we saw a decline with IBM leaving this past year in the grand list, we did some calculations that were asked to say, if IBM was here, where would we be today? So based on losing almost $36 million from IBM leaving and about $3.3 million with personal property leaving, our grand list, we were down across the board at 0.69% overall between motor vehicles, personal property, and
John,
real
do you have
estate.
it?
I think it's probably page 3 down.
Minutes?
Yeah.
Is there a sheet?
Scroll down, yeah.
Yeah,
Keep
scroll down.
scrolling, keep scrolling.
About 4 pages maybe, Dan?
Down,
I think it's 3A or 6A. I don't know.
scrolling, not down.
No,
It's,
It should be in there.
it's in there.
I can bring it up here if we have to.
I think, yeah, just if you scroll down on the original
Well, now you're
page
renaming
you
it.
were on. Yeah, I think it's,
okay.
keep going.
Keep going. Keep going.
It's past the minutes, yeah. Nope.
Little
Further down,
more.
further down.
Yep.
Yeah,
There it
There
is.
you
There it is.
zoom out maybe.
So with this, we definitely see the decrease with IBM not being here. Something that was not accounted for, and if we were to adjust the budget, which you don't see here today, accounting for the IBM release, we would have been at a positive $570,000 on an increase in grand list for real estate. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot. However, what doesn't also account for are exemptions of almost $17 million, which we didn't account for because of a new statute that was passed in October, as of October 1, 2024, with veterans that are 100% permanently and totally disabled. So right now, people receiving those benefits, we have about 47 people receiving that benefit, which entitles them to a free quote-unquote house assessment. So people are receiving a 100% exemption on their house. If you own a house plus land plus outbuildings, it's not the outbuildings and the land, it's just the house itself. So we didn't account for that. And so if you did add that back in, we would have, seen almost $18 million of an increase in our grand list on real estate. So with also, I want to bring your attention to the personal property. Although we did lose $3.2 million with 8 companies leaving IBM, which included Kyndryl and some other subsidies up there, we did see growth. So although we did lose that, we gained over $4 million, and that was already with IBM leaving. So we are doing our job and our due diligence between land use, the assessor's office, bringing in new business in town. So we are doing that. And then obviously motor vehicles, we're just seeing an influx of cars. So overall, I do see growth for the whole town, knowing that we did it will take years to develop the IBM property, but we are seeing growth. Right now, we have about 40 properties that are being built for new residential, partially built and new oncoming, so we do already see that growth coming in this year with the grand list. Unfortunately, we've already have 5 new applications for an additional veterans coming on for the 26 grand list.
So
Yes, John?
my question is, the Board of Finance has established for the Board of Selectmen a goal of increasing the budget no more than inflation plus the growth in the grand list. If we were to take IBM loss as a unique one-time thing and adjust it in last year for a comparison of this year to last year, and you do all this other stuff, what would the change in the grand list be?
Including, the additional veterans that we didn't account for, we would be flat at this point. We would hold flat at a
Okay, so the,
0.02.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was the question.
That's all?
Well, I don't know.
I still,
I
so
wanted-
I still don't, including the part about the veterans, right? Is that included or not included in the flat?
That's included in the flat, Tom.
Okay.
So actually, if you take out the veterans to ourselves, what is just the increase of the IBM? I think it's still a 0.8 or roughly
0.68.
0.68. So it's a 0.68 increase if we just match the IBM, but once we take out the veterans, it brings it down to flat.
Okay, and the veterans was something that we passed?
It's a state, the state passed it that,
I see, okay.
I'm not sure if you have the data, but how do we compare to other towns with grand list growth?
I don't have that, but I can definitely have that and pass it on.
Because I would imagine we may have more veteran. I'm not really sure if that's, but the commercial grand list is really the concern, I think, that a lot
Well,
of us
the
have.
commercial grand list, we do, obviously, if you take out the anomaly of IBM, we do have some grand list growth. There's the pump house that's been put up. We have the finishing of, next to the library, we have the storage units coming up. We have on Old Waterbury Road, Kevin Bennett's new apartments that are going up there. But other than that, there is no other commercial or industrial businesses being brought into town in a building. Businesses, yes, going into structures that are already here, but new construction for commercial and industrial, no.
Darcel, how many veterans are taking advantage of that credit, and how much is it over last year?
So we have an additional 24 this year over last year. And last year, we were at 6 million, and this year, we're just about 18 million.
So it's double, though, from last year?
Yes.
It was
And we-
20.
Yes, it did double over the year, and that is under what the state anticipated across the board, for all towns. The anticipated numbers, if not doubled, tripled between
Do
what
you
the
see that
state saw.
increasing next year?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
We're already seeing that right now.
thank you.
John, a question. Is there a way that we could go back and adjust these numbers and take out the IBM, which is gone? One of my concerns has been, is the balance between the growth of commercial ratables and the portion of the tax rate that falls on residences. And Southbury, compared to other towns in the state, we are highly leveraged toward residential taxes, okay? Can we at least get our hands around something that if we take out IBM over a period of time, let's say over the last 5, 7 years, whatever you think is reasonable, what has been the trend? What would it have been had IBM not been here? That would give, I think, the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, and anybody else who's interested, a sense of what is happening in the real numbers adjusted for IBM. Is the growth in commercial keeping pace with the growth in residential? My concern has always been here with the senior citizen population living on fixed incomes, and the more we push the tax rate up on the residential side, the more it hits these folks. So I would like to see over a period of time, and it doesn't have to be now, some type of an analysis of what has the growth, because there are folks, including myself, who've been concerned with commercial economic development, and are we going over it or after it enough? So can we work out something that you, as the assessor, think is a reasonable assumption of what the growth has been, aside from IBM, over some period of time?
IBM was about 14% of our commercial growth there, so
Yeah.
we're losing 14% of,
Well, of the growth or just the grand list?
well,
mean-
14% of the commercial.
It hasn't grown, has it?
No, it hasn't
It
grown.
hasn't grown.
No.
But every town has the largest taxpayer. I mean, is
Yeah.
IBM's that much of an outlier between, any other town? I think, both John, I agree with a lot of John. I think we'd like a little bit more data to show how much of an outlier IBM was, what we can do, and try to be proactive. I know you're doing everything you can, but what more can the town be doing to fix this? Because this has been a trend on more than a decade, and clearly we're failing as a town. We're putting way too much tax burden on residents. And so I don't know if you have the answers, but if there's anything in your that we can be more proactive on, I'm all ears.
No, I definitely would like, to not only think about it, but come back with some concrete answers for you. And
Part of the issue that we have in Southbury is there's not a lot of space for businesses to grow. So, a lot of our open space is permanent open space. So, if we're gonna focus on it, we need to focus on that as well. And a lot of the residential, and I could be wrong, but I believe a lot of the residential was the COVID spike. So many people moving up from New York during the COVID area, you'll see more of the residential growth on that side as well. Our commercial has been flat probably for the last 5 years. I think the majority of growth in our commercial has been out of the assessor's office by Darcel and her staff doing an incredible job finding people and putting them on the list. So we really have been flat.
people are coming to the town and occupying the space in, storefronts that haven't been there, or in existing buildings, which is awesome, and we're getting that. And we're making sure we do our due diligence on that and growing the personal property side of that. However, it's not, like you said, growing the commercial buildings for the real estate side.
And in particular, as we go into reval, here, Darcel,
We have 2027 will be our next
2027, we have another reval, so everyone's got to be prepared for that. If the commercial and the residential is still a disparity there, you're going to see more of a hit on the residential side.
Absolutely.
Okay, yes, Jack, and then we'll move on, yes?
There's recently been a lot of open discussion, press reports. I think the selectmen have talked about it, the economic development director position. Do we need one? Don't we need one? A quarter of a position, a whole position? This board, almost a year ago, spent a lot of time talking about the fact that we'd been looking for a strategy and a plan to grow industrial and commercial grand list properties in this town for 5 years. We can now say it's 6 years. We don't have a plan. We don't have a strategy and a plan. And Tim's new, you know, I wouldn't have expected anything to have happened certainly in the last 3 months since you've been on board. But this board said we would restore the economic development director position when there was a strategy, when there was a plan, and therefore a role and responsibilities for the economic development director to lead and implement. And, you know, we're going full circle again. We can't be surprised that there's no growth because there's been no plan for growth. There's been no initiative for growth in this town for a half a dozen years or more. At some point, we either got to accept that there's going to be no growth because we're not going to do anything about it, or we got to start doing something about it.
I think the administration, the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, we all realize that, and we got to keep trying to figure something out. I don't have an answer. I certainly.
But having said that, doesn't it make sense to hire a full-time person now so they can work on a strategy with the town?
Well, we tried that for 5 years.
Yeah, we had the shot, yeah.
We could go in a different
Different
direction.
person.
We had the same person for 5 years, perhaps a different person would be more effective.
I'm going to,
But, I mean, at the core, though, what Dan is saying, and what I've heard from the economic development, is there is no commercial land to develop, you know?
That's another
and
problem.
Unless we change our attitude about trying to, I guess, zoning or something, that then there is no real commercial land to develop. So, I mean, that's what the economic development director told me many times. And besides, you know, Volpe Rosen and the IBM property, and maybe some area over near the transfer station, there is no other real commercial, anything commercially zoned really to develop. So unless we want to face that issue, and I don't know, you know, if I turn around and put my hat on as a citizen, I'm quite happy. I mean, I like Southbury being rural, and I'm not as kind of inclined to go and try to force commercial development where we don't have it, right? Where we don't, we're without, you know, I mean, I'd love to see an idea for Volpe Rosen, but I think if you put a big idea up in Volpe Rosen, then the people around Volpe Rosen would scream, right? So in any case, I think there's a fundamental issue really in the town, and it's a little bit schizophrenic as a town this way, okay, about commercial property.
I think for purposes of tonight, I think we're going to have to leave it with Tim and the administration to figure out if they can figure out a strategy, which no one has been able to figure out yet. That'd be great if you could. But I think we're done with this. Darcel, thank you very much. We'll look forward to some recast numbers, taking IBM out and looking at other growth. I'll work with you on that, and we'll get that to John and the Board of Finance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darcel.
Let's go back to the agenda, John. Next on the agenda, three people who usually don't come to our meeting just joined us. The chairman of the school board, the superintendent of schools, and the fiscal officer of the school system. At our last meeting, we talked about whether or not this board, as a board, as opposed to as individuals, which we have a right to do, if this board was going to take a position on the pending school project, 2 new schools. To further that, the school board scheduled a special meeting for members of the Board of Finance in Middlebury and Southbury to review the two schools, walk through them, and get a presentation from the administration. Well, we've done that. My mission was to hopefully bring we as members to a full enough understanding of all the issues surrounding this project so that we could take a position. Well, here's the next meeting. We've got one more before this thing gets voted on in May, and I've asked the chairman, the superintendent, and the fiscal officer to come and be available to answer our questions. I also asked them if they would bring us some information, and if you guys could pass that out. A key piece of information which has been on Facebook and other venues has been what this might cost a Southbury taxpayer. And there was a document presented by the consultant, which had a chart, which has since been changed. Joe, can you speak to your understanding of the chart, and then I will speak to mine.
Evening, everybody. There we go. I'll just go pretty quick through the packet that you folks have in front of you. Just kind of going page by page, we kind of looked at, obviously, some of the current debt we would have to issue for the new school. On the second page, you'll see, we looked at the net new debt will be $90 million in total once the state reimbursement comes in for the project and basically the bonds are finally issued. We would issue a lot of temporary band notes. I know the town does that as well. I believe you did it with your last bond. It's temporary borrowing until you lock in your full bonds. We also looked at a scenario of different years of bonds, a 20-year, a 25, or a 30-year bond, and then kind of got a sense of the current market. 3.25 is some of the rates they've seen out there for AA rated paper, and 3.1 for AAA paper. We did also do the math around the ADM, which is 1/3 Middlebury, 2/3 Southbury. Next page is kind of just a quick tour of interest rates. I mean, most folks would see rates were super high, and obviously we came down during COVID to basically where money was virtually free. Flip into page 4, again, kind of more just where the Fed funds rates were going through. Obviously during COVID days, we were literally borrowing for $0. Those were one good thing about those days, I would say. Page 5, obviously, is the current rating agencies that exist. Southbury, as you folks know, is a AAA rated. What's your Standard & Poor's? The region is rated AA2 by Moody's, and the town of Middlebury is a AA1. Typically, regional school districts kind of fall one notch behind one of their member towns. Obviously, we're not rated by S&P. We are just rated by Moody's currently. We've been told S&P is a little more, not as understanding for the regional school district structure, because most school districts are attached to their municipality, where we're our own entity. But anyway, so we are AA2 rated. That was recently reaffirmed a few months ago. Just a quick history of kind of what makes up the rating, the different percentage pieces. Fiscal discipline, that obviously comes from our member towns as well. I mean, all these things, we mirror our demographic, the economic makeup and demographic, 25%. Your financial performance, 25%. Your fund balance levels, they look at obviously the town's fund balances, which we know Southbury has a healthy fund balance, as does Middlebury. Your debt management, 15%. The region at the current time only carries one bond, a repair bond for $10 million. And your long-term, your pension and OPEB liabilities going forward. So that's what makes up the bond rating. Simple little pie chart to kind of understand that. And then, as John Michael said, we'll get into the real math. So this option 1 looks as a 20-year amortization schedule of the bonds. We will take on bands as we move through, but once we lock in the $90 million kind of net of all the state reimbursements, if you'll kind of see, you'll see the way kind of in column G, we basically take on about $1.2 million each year of new debt into the budget, column G going across, about $1.2 million each year. And then you'll see as you keep kind of going to the right, you'll see Middlebury's breakdown and Southbury's breakdown. And then through the help of Dan and Seth and Middlebury, we kind of broke down like what the cost of a mill is worth in town. Obviously, these are changed as we go through reval and all kinds of different things. But so basically, in the town of Southbury, that just the cost of the school will be, we believe, an estimate of a 0.28 of a mill, which then that factors to, based on $100,000 of assessed value, $28 would be what the cost of the school would be starting in the 27-28 school year. And obviously, you kind of keep down with your finger, about $28 each year as we keep adding on the debt as we grow. Take questions anytime on our model. Again, this is the 20-year, and there's a 25 and a 30 to follow.
Go ahead. So the cumulative impact is equal, in any year, is equal to what's in that row plus the sum of all prior rows.
Yes, so that rolls up. So the 28 then goes 28 plus 28. Yes, that number continues to roll up. So obviously, as you go up the line, each number totals down. I think do you have a copy of the PowerPoint in your? I sent it over, didn't I? You should have it. So yeah, so that does continue to total down. There was a debate whether we should total the column and then reverse it the other way, because obviously when you start to go, when the debt finally plateaus, you don't really, it's not really a refund back, so that confused some people when we went through our examples. The next page is kind of the bond.
Yeah.
Dan, do you have it, Dan? I can send it to you.
It's on
He's
his.
having trouble finding it.
Hold on.
Should be attached, John, in the packet, but if not, I could find it here.
Hold on, Dan, I'll send you the latest so you have it too.
What we're looking for is
You've got it, Dan. I just sent it.
a little chart Dan and I drew up. I drew it up. Dan says it's correct. That indicates what a single-family homeowner in Southbury might see, what happened to their taxes. We got a lot of graphs and charts.
Oh, good.
But we have something that was also on the internet. There was a gentleman on the internet, Mr. John Bulick, who has since amended his, okay. You want to make that bigger yet? Okay. And let's show the lower right-hand portion, John, please. Okay. Let's see, the median single-family home in Southbury is worth $448,000 according to the assessor. At 70%, that's assessed at $314,000. The chart, the 30-year bond chart, which is on page 12, shows that for every $100,000 in assessed value, the first year of the bonds, there would be a 0.28 28 cents, I guess, 28 cents per $100,000 or per $1,000, which would mean that taxes for a homeowner would increase $88 the first year. The second year, the taxes would increase $21.
28 per 100.
Yeah.
For that, for 20, and for a $314,000 house, the average single-family home would increase $68, and so on for the first 7 years And after 7 years, the number becomes minus and the numbers start to go down. So the cumulative number and the average is 200, and the average for a homeowner in Southbury over those 7 years would be $270, or when I had to pay my mortgage, the bank took it every month from me, and that would be on average, $23 a month for every single family home in Southbury, peaking out at $32 a month, because that's an average. Now, Mr. Balick has done some calculations, which are on Facebook, I understand. And he has used an averaging concept, and I'm afraid I don't follow it, but his answer is $20. He said the average, he calculated out that the cumulative average cost for a single-family home in Southbury would be $240, which is $20 a month. So that's a framework. People want to know. And then, okay.
How much, I guess,
Question, Tim?
So when we were doing the tour, right, and you took me to Pomperaug, I guess, right? You said the roof has to get done there anyway, right? So to what degree is this the extra over what you got to do anyway? You know, like in terms of, I mean, does this take into account the capital, you know, like if you didn't do it, you have a lot of capital expenses anyway, right? To what degree is this the excess over those capital expenses, or, so, I mean, if that's true, then this is almost a little bit misleading to me in a certain way, because the capital expenses themselves would have to be factored into this as well. That if you didn't do it, you'd still have a bunch of pretty big capital projects going, right?
It'd be a real cost of doing that.
Yeah, the reason we're not actually actively pursuing a capital bond in lieu of the project. Now, so the roof and PS is about $2.5 million. Various upgrades. The structure itself is very old, and it, as you can see from the design, the low ceilings, the miles of carpeting, there's a lot of pieces in there that would take to make it a modern building, short of like a complete gut job or rip down.
Can I ask Tom's question?
But my question is more a financial
It's a different
one,
way.
right? Is that analysis, is that the excess of the you haven't put the capital expenses in?
No, we've not.
So this is actually almost like an exaggeration. I mean, the number would be lower if you had to put the capital, if you didn't do the project.
If you didn't do the project, you just do like basically repair bonds like we did the last cycle. You would do smaller
Right.
repair bonds, but you
And
wouldn't
so,
have.
is that in this analysis or not?
Let me ask it a different way.
Those are new buildings.
The current school budget, does it include provisions for the cost of whatever capital projects need to be done in addition?
No.
Okay. Josh, please.
I was just going to add that when we started this project, this started as a roof analysis 4 years ago. That's really where this all began. What was it going to cost? What's the condition of the roof? And we did renovate first.
$10 million repair bond, does that include the roofs?
Cost to renovate 50, 60-year-old mechanicals, roofs, parking lots. Oh, I can stand up next to it. Thank you. I won't leave Joe standing there. I don't want to take away your voice. But we went down, we started this, we didn't end up with new school construction.
Close, thank you.
No, I get all that, and I buy that, but this analysis, my question is, does this analysis incorporate, you're gonna have to do one or the other. Is that not true? You know, in other words, you're gonna have to do one or the other. And so, what I guess I care about most in this analysis is the excess of this over the other, which is not doing it, right? And that's my question in essence. Does this the excess, or
Like the delta between what bonds we would need to renovate versus
Yes.
build new?
yes?
So the renovation costs were actually almost the same. Now, would you do them all at the same time? Would you scaffold them? But when we did, actually, in the other packet you have, there's a chart, I think it's maybe the last page or the second to last page of the other packet. That breaks out it's the second to last page, looks like this. There's a renovate versus build new. The challenge with renovating, honestly, your biggest cost is you have to do it while students are in the building, so you have to build temporary space. So you end up bonding a lot of occupied space that's gonna go away at the end. So you have to build temporary classrooms to move students out while we renovate the space that they would be in, which then lengthens the cost of the project. So you're not actually buying any capital material, you're basically building swing space that's very expensive. So you gain an economy of scale when you do it this way because the students will be in their school and we'll move them to the new one. So there is no delta between what this would cost versus kind of the renovate the building.
There must be. I mean, I
So if you look, well, you look at the last page there. So with the renovate is new, if you look at Gainfield,
Yes.
is $43 million. The new construction is $42,760,000.
Okay, so this,
So the
if-
town,
Yeah, that's the building, that's the total cost after kind of net state reimbursement
To the region.
to the region.
To the
'Cause then,
region.
right, because then town is only 2/3 of that number.
Okay, but if that's true, then that whole analysis is moot, because you're gonna charge me that anyway for capital, one way or the other, right?
Wait a minute, I think we're not misunderstanding each other. Tom, you started and said when you went through the building, you heard that the roof had to be replaced.
Yeah, I mean, I started the question about, have they thought, and this is the second part of my question, really, has you thought of a two-phase analysis, right? Where you did one for a while, and then you did the other after that, and two phases in time, right? And so I guess if you did a two-phase, this would be 14 years, but it'd be less, okay, per year. I think.
Well, I think.
I think the answer to that, the answer to that was, we got to do the roof in Pomperaug anyway. We really, one way or the other, we got to do the roof in Pomperaug, right? So if you did a two-phase analysis, I guess it'd have to be Pomperaug because you got to do it, right, apparently.
Well, so if I understand your question, so we could do like the roof, bond that, then 5 years later do the mechanicals, then do the parking lot, then do the structural pieces. Like you could,
Well,
when you,
I
you
guess-
couldn't just do the roof, I guess.
No,
is-
okay, I get it, but I'm saying, okay, independent of the two, I was thinking two schools, like,
Yep.
okay, so you got to do the roof in Pomperaug, even though it's this newer school maybe.
Yep.
You do Pomperaug first and Gainfield second, okay? But but my main thing about this analysis is that if this is true-ish, right, then, I don't know, the only thing that says that that's moot, because unless somehow you can put this over time in a way that is different, right? Because one way or another, you're gonna charge me, you're gonna charge me more for the renovate than you're gonna charge me for the new construction, right?
I could be wrong, but these renovate as new, I may be misunderstanding. I think Tom's talking about kind of doing the bare minimum to maintain these buildings, which is, I guess, what's been done the last 40 years, give or take. But these renovate as new, this is pretty brand new, like brand spanking new, right? This isn't just putting a new roof and a fresh coat of paint. My understanding is the renovation was all that structural stuff that is
HVAC.
like a major overhaul, not just a new roof or a new little, like, am I wrong about that?
No, like if this was like, do we just put a new roof on and be done with it? I don't think we'd be in front of you having this conversation. I think you have mechanical systems that are 50 to 60 years old. Like you have piping, you have, Gainfield has 7 different staircases in it that you can't just renovate to, right? So, and the roof, if we ask for state reimbursement, if you pull that roof off within 20 years, you have to pay back the state reimbursement. So if we put a roof on now and ask for reimbursement, and then 10 years from now had to replace the building, you'd have to replace the building at cost 10 years from now and reimburse the state anything they gave us towards any of the roofing we did now. So I do think, you're right, like that renovate is new is, let's renovate the building and be done for the next
So
35
then,
years.
okay, that's clear then. But then, to me, the missing thing in the middle there is, okay, if I just did what I had to do, and I got it, and I understood you, I got to do the roof, right? It's not like something we can just put off much more. If I just had to do what I had to do, what would the number be here? And what's the delta to that number versus what I have to do anyway? Because what I have to do anyway is going to cost something, right?
I mean, when you go beyond, the Josh point, you go beyond the roof, it's all the carpeting does asbestos on it that has to be mitigated. Like, there's way more than just a $2 million roof there. You're dealing with.
I know, but
all
what's the
those
number?
things.
So if it's not this number, as Michael said, what is it? If the number is truly 40, whatever, 40, not got my glasses, but 43 million versus
43 million.
About 112 for each school.
Yeah,
The challenge also is if you just kind of do it in pieces, this is a renovate to new, which means basically, like, think of it kind of like gutting to the studs.
Yeah.
Where if you kind of do a piecemeal repair, none of that is state reimbursable, so then you lose all the state reimbursement. So if you just kind of said, let's just go through this and kind of change carpeting, kind of attempt to make a light modernization, the state will not reimburse any of that of the project.
Okay.
That's kind of what we have been doing with these two
Yeah,
schools.
correct.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Have-
but
Sorry,
I sort of get all that, but then this analysis means nothing to me because it, I get that this is what it's gonna cost to do it, but it's gonna cost me something anyway, either this or something in the middle or something else. So I feel like this number is already too high in some, and in some ways I'm trying to help you guys in the sense that,
Tom,
I think this,
Tom, I think the answer to your question is very simple. If we don't build these new schools, it's going to cost less, significantly less to do something. The question is,
I don't
what
know
would
if
the
that's true.
something?
That's my question.
Well, you get what you pay.
What- The question is, would you or would you not change the HVAC system? Would you or would you not put in air conditioning? Would you or would you not change all the carpeting? Would you or would you not redesign the roads so that you get the traffic for PSE off Main Street?
And if we're doing that all out of pocket
I
without
can't
state
imagine
reimbursement.
figuring that out.
Right now, you're looking, and part of the reason we're even kind of on this path is right now, Southbury has the opportunity to get the most construction reimbursement that we've ever had the opportunity. I mean, at least in recent history. I don't know, maybe if you go back 30 or 40 years, but certainly in the last 20 years, this is the most reimbursement. So we're going to pay 45 cents, estimated 45 cents on the dollar for this construction. If we were to do any kind of the renovation that you're talking about, that number might be lower, but 100% of that would come out of the taxpayers of the communities. And so there is a kind of opportunity cost here for us to get 65% more or 60% more than we would normally have access to. And so you're going to build 2 new schools at less than half price, and that's where there's a sense of urgency in the conversation.
Maybe, Tom,
Josh
the
and Joe,
question.
have we run
Yes,
this?
Jerry.
Have we
Excuse-
run this analysis with doing one school and maybe repairing the other one and what that would look like as far as a bond rate?
So the challenge becomes a little bit when you say repairing the other one, which is the other one,
Just maintaining
right?
it for,
I
yeah,
think
you'd have to
clearly
figure out which
PES
one would
needs
be
it more than GES.
So,
Let's just
like,
be honest.
Maintain
Right,
it for
yeah, right.
5 years and then, because I only look at what, for the citizens of Southbury, you look at $92 million, that's a big number.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out what would be a way of, how do we mitigate that to make it a
The
little more
the two
palatable?
challenge, yeah, and I appreciate, we've had 2 years of some of these conversations, which is kind of how we ended up here. But some of the challenge is arguably PES is the newer school, but it's in worse shape. And Gainfield, while maybe in better shape, is not ADA compliant, and we can't have a portion of our population there, which creates a kind of difficult choice as to which school becomes the first one. The other 2 challenges, cost escalation is estimated at about $400,000 per month. So if you put it off 5 years, you can do the math on the premium for that. And at least right now, there's an additional 15% reimbursement for each of the buildings. I don't know, and again, I have no crystal ball. When the state put that in, they did it with good intentions to increase the amount of preschool space in the state. The kind of unintended consequence of that is every school district in the state right now is gearing up construction projects because, at least in one community, they're going to build a $350 million high school. It's going to have a preschool in it so that they qualify for the 15% reimbursement. So it doesn't take long to look at economies of scale before Hartford's going to start to say, ooh, it did exactly what we wanted to happen, and now we have preschools being built everywhere in the state, but we can't afford to continue the 15%. So again, it's not a scare tactic. Maybe it's there in 5 years, but if it's not there in 5 years, we're going to lose that on the other school. And things like, again, pick a school. Do you put a roof on a building that we're going to tear down in 5 or 6 years? You know, arguably, both of these schools have been talked about either doing large-scale renovations or this weekend I read a report from 2014 where they were talking about building a new game field. So, like, we've been talking about this for 12 or 15 years. And so, again, we can do whatever the community wants, but we just want to be transparent and kind of risk analysis.
Steve, you had a question? I'm sorry, Jerry, and then Steve. Jerry?
So I'm not sure if I could connect the dots, but the 5-point-something% increase in the Board of Ed budget, and then I looked at, but not thoroughly, into the construction costs. Do you have a contingency fund for overrides as far as these numbers may be good today, but are they good when you start construction? And do you have anything in your budget to account for that or to help with that?
There's the architecting cost escalation with the estimator until the day we break ground, so you estimate costs from today forward. And there's also, each school carries approximately $3.5 million worth of change orders as well.
So I guess they explained it to me, these costs are based upon starting in 2 years and taking 4 years to do the project and all the increases that would go along with that, with the phasing of what they did. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to stick with the theme of the evening of predicting the future, right? Getting our crystal balls. So a couple quick ones. I think the first part, it says you're assuming bond interest rates at 3.25, but recent sales, 3.1. Do you feel that's optimistic, or you're confident in that number?
That's crystal ball land too. So again, if we move up 1%, the calculations will change. Yeah, that is trying to take some sense of the market.
And I guess that's part of the reason I ask. Also it's going to be done in 3 tranches. At what point are we worried about rate risk and all this analysis being moot?
When the region went out we had our repair bond back in April, when we had a lot of issues with in the bond market, we actually issued another band to kind of skip some bad interest rate cycle, because if we had locked, we'd been north of 4%. That was back in about when some of the tariff stuff was going on in April. So we actually reissued temporary bonds and kind of just pushed it along. So that way, you do have some flexibility with the bands to kind of extend them another year. If you think the market's messy, you can kind of do some of those types of things.
And that's part of why we modeled the 20, 25, and 30, because I think that there are some financial things that we can do to kind of based on other market conditions.
And then kind of, joining it with what we were talking about earlier, all of this, that whole analysis that you did assumes zero growth in the grand list, right? So if we could have some grand list growth, if we could spread the burden off a wider base, maybe some commercial, it would not be as much of a hit.
You guys could erase it, based on the work you're doing here, you could flatten that. Yes, I mean, that's the challenge.
If we continue to have declining grand list growth, then this is going to be even more expensive. So it may be even more incumbent upon us to try to figure out how we grow this grand list finally.
And the other, again, not to make the soup messier, but when you start looking at the variables, we also looked at current ADM rates, so student population. If either town would have a change, one of the challenges that we face is that we go out 4 decimal points in our ADM calculation. So it guarantees every year there's a shift. But that ADM shift will also kind of impact each community based on their proportion to the school district.
Dan, your question?
No.
Oh,
I'm good, Joe.
I had one.
Yeah, sure.
Do you factor in any cost to us to do this? Like, do we have policemen out there kind of directing traffic and like, with the construction costs, I hate construction things just because I hate construction things, that they drive me nuts. But, I mean, have you thought about the cost to the town?
Yeah, I mean, the advantage for both sites is that we have staging areas close by, and can access, actually, some of the access, for those constructions are built into this. The other piece that, I don't know, I'll let Joe speak to the idea that, Gainfield, we have the ability to connect to the sewer. And I know that you're replacing the one-lane bridge to make it a two-lane bridge. There may be some economies of scale to minimize some of the amount of time we have to dig up streets and put construction out there.
Steve?
Yeah, I apologize, I forgot one on my little future casting. A lot of the ramp up that in the beginning, is largely dependent on those bond premiums, correct?
Yes.
What if they don't materialize?
It's pretty common to see bond premiums inside rates when you have higher rated paper. So our bond advisor does this like all day long for many municipalities.
Totally comfortable with it?
Yeah, it's pretty common. I mean, most towns do book those in. Again, the ability to kind of smooth the bonds, and as we kind of ratchet up the debt, we do think we'd like to avoid the sticker shock that does hit once the bonds do come on. So.
Right. Okay, thank you.
To get the state funding, we have to build a pre-K program. Do we currently have a pre-K program?
So we currently have one pre-K program at Long Meadow.
Okay. Would that add to the general expenditure budget every year by adding?
So as of now, the state has some offsets as part of a grant system to, I believe it's $100,000 for staff in that program. And the other piece is some of that program can also be fee-based. So one of the challenges we have at Long Meadow right now is kind of the mandated piece of the preschool program takes up the space that we have, and so we have very limited capacity for revenue-generating preschool. One of the challenges statewide is that the state wants to move in a direction of universal preschool. There's just not enough space. So this whole incentivized process is to get space so that they can continue to grow preschool programs.
Great.
So, yeah, it'll triple our ability.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Josh.
Jack, you sitting over there, arms crossed, thoughts?
I'm listening.
These folks this is an opportunity for them to, quote, sell this project. In selling is overcoming objections. And I think if we're gonna take a position, the things that we're concerned about or objections we might have or unanswered questions that we might have, these people are here and they can certainly answer the questions. If they can overcome the objections, I don't know. But I think they need to understand what those objections are so they can address them. Dan?
Joe, just a quick question for you. If Southbury was to get AAA Moody's, would that impact you guys in any way?
The region's issue is, in a sense, we can only build reserves at 2% a year. So when Moody's looks at us, for example, or S&P, when you look at kind of your percentage of budget to reserve, the region can only add 2% a year by state statute. So no secret, $90 million budget, you can put $1.8 million a year into reserve. So growing out a significant reserve based on a percentage of our overall budget, I think would be hard for us to move our rating significant. I do think between the AA2 to the AAA, I think you're talking about probably you're out in the tenths somewhere.
Yep.
And the one that we just issued, our rate was better than a couple of AAA rated towns. So
Right.
like I don't know if it's the work to get there. I don't know that you're
Yeah.
going to see a marginal kind of change.
Okay. And we have that in petty cash, Joe. If you come to my office, we can.
Thanks. Excellent.
Any other questions for, yes,
Did I forget one?
Steve?
Are there,
What do you got, Steve?
I apologize if maybe I should know this. Are there, or is it allowed, are there call provisions in case the rates go the way we want them to?
On the bonds, we can't refi the
Can't.
bonds for 8 years,
Right.
which is why we went out we were very worried in April, because we said, geez, if we lock these bands, you get a hedge fund could throw a 5% handle on a bond, you're locked in for 5 or 8 years. So that's why we quick reverted back to the band and stretched it out 9 more months. And then we got a very, very solid lock rate that we had. So yeah, you're 8 years on the call. Good question.
I asked these questions when we had our special meeting, but I'll ask them here again because I'm not sure if that's streamed or not. But looking back to your site ratings on possible properties, right? So I know there's a lot of talk about one site, maybe Roxbury Road or some property by Exit 14 or something like that. I know the acquisition costs the stars didn't align this time around, so path of least resistance meant let's just rebuild on the sites Region 15 already owns. Makes sense to me, people are already used to it. That said, are we gonna be kicking ourselves 2 years down the road if we say, oh shit, there is a great property, we could have done the 2 schools and the 1 property. That's what you wanted, that's what the feasibility study wanted. So I have a hard time when it's like, well, I know you can't always get what you want, sometimes, try sometimes, you might find you get what you need. But are you gonna feel like you're kicking yourself if 2 years down the road we do find that 1 property, or your position is we should just go for what we have?
I mean, there's also the buyer's remorse of if we did this 14 years ago, the cost of the schools would have been a lot less. I mean, I do think there's always this kind of like attractiveness of, that's the perfect place. I mean, we did spend about 4 or 5 months kind of knocking on doors and trying to acquire those properties that are owned by private hands. All of those places made it very clear that there was, never going to happen. That being said, never comes at some point, right? And the same problem that Dan mentioned before, honestly, the properties that we would want for a school, you would also want to build commercial on if they became available, and we would take them off the tax rolls if we put a school on them. Arguably we would trade, some other property that we'd have to sell back or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason that we're even here today is always do we just repair? Can we buy 5 more years? The 2 pieces that I think really pushed us here was when the state passed that law of the 15%. As a suburban community, the ability to get a 65% reimbursement is just not something that's going to live very long. And there's what I think a pretty small window for us to do that. And I think, if that property comes available in 2 years, but the 15% goes away and that's 30 million, I think that's what keeps you up at night arguing with yourself, And at some point, we have to put a stake in the ground and say, we're gonna do something, or at least try to do something.
Dan?
No, I just was thinking, have we been tracking construction costs based on what's going on with the oil market right now, and how are these numbers going to be affected by that?
Yeah, we haven't looked at the oil market in the last 3 weeks. We're both happy we locked our diesel and fuel oil, though. That we are both happy about. But, yeah, no, that's obviously a longer term concern. We're going to have to bid for a roof on Long Meadow in another month. I mean, all those things are concerns.
Other than the fact that 10 years ago plus, you looked at doing this, metaphysics, someone looked at it and decided not to do it. But we've got a 50-year-old building and an 80-year-old building, is that what we're looking at? Why now? Maybe a 100-year-old building will work. And you guys must have addressed, for educational purposes and safety purposes and all the other, why are you saying, okay, we cannot and we should not wait to bring this forward? Can you talk about that for a few minutes?
I mean, I think we have this conversation all the time, right? Like, there's no school district that has enough dollars and no community that has enough dollars to fix every aging property kind of as soon as you would, right? There's a lot of how do we make it work, and how do you assess where the most important needs are. I think the other challenge that we face is some of these buildings are now going to require repairs and replacements that are going to impact other places. We're going to disproportionately be putting money into capital repairs in these 2 buildings. And, if there wasn't an additional 30 million on the table right now, I don't know, maybe we would have a different conversation. But the fact that there's such an incentive And the fact that every day I talk to school districts that are doing this and in this, we were far ahead of a lot of districts because we'd started this really 2 or 3 years ago. And we're able to kind of move through this on our normal cycle. There's not a hurry up and do a building project. But you have school districts in the state, that 15% brings them to 80 or 90% reimbursement, not 65. And at 90% reimbursement or 90, the law says it can't be more than 100, right? That the 15%, but if you were at 80% reimbursement and this brings you to 95, you're gonna build a lot of schools as fast as you can at 5 cents on the dollar. And so that is kind of this sense of urgency of, you know, if we miss this window, and I make no bones, I don't know how long that window is gonna last, maybe they'll keep it going for 10 years. But that's, to me, the schools are not gonna be in better shape, and it's not going to be cheaper to do it in the future. So whatever that impact is to the community, 5 years from now is going to be escalation costs. Maybe the oil market gets better, maybe it gets worse, you know, and so because we can't see in the future, what I know is that there's more conditions to do it now than to wait.
If I could just add
Yes.
one thing too. And I agree with everything that Mr. Smith said. I think also what's playing a part in all of this too is, I think it's fair to say that the Board of Ed in general has kicked the can down the road for facility maintenance, like large facility maintenance, for a long time. Things changed when we had a new administration join us that had a more proactive approach, which is why we first did that repair bond, which the community granted, which we are very grateful for, and addressed mainly the high school pool, which was in a need of repair. But the board knew that Gainfield and Pomprog Elementary had bigger issues. We do get a lot of parental complaints and staff complaints, to be honest, about the conditions of those schools. And we knew that we needed to conduct a feasibility study to understand what's the best way to approach fixing those problems. We've been doing that now for a couple years, the feasibility study committee, which I'd like to publicly thank Mr. Michaels for participating. And we had a number of stakeholders, both from Middlebury and Southbury, town officials, teachers, principals, parents. And we wrestled with some of those questions that you talked about, Mr. Connors. There's actually a presentation from May 22nd that answers your question. You know, what about fixing what we have? And Tecton did a breakdown of architectural and mechanical, plumbing, fire protection, and what square footage the cost is typically per square footage for that. And the feasibility study committee thought the better route was to do building the new school. So I appreciate the time and effort that the feasibility study committee spent doing it. This is a heavy lift, and we recognize that. The board recognizes that this is a big cost, and it's a little intimidating, and which is why the board spent so much time wrestling with what was the best route to take. We do recognize the seriousness of this and the cost to taxpayers, but we truly feel that we are acting in the best interests of Region 15 and our communities by tackling this now, when the wins are such that we can maximize the amount of state reimbursement. $30 million is nothing to sneeze at, which is the cost of, we would get reimbursed back if we do the preschools, which could possibly also be a revenue generator for the region. So we are trying to do the right thing. The board is trying to do the right thing and not kick the can down the road, which is why we are presenting this in May. Would love to have all the support we can get, but we're hoping that this is gonna pass.
Assuming this passes, when would you break ground?
June 30th of this year is when we have to submit the grant to the state. It has to be officially approved next year during the legislative session, and then it would be that summer probably that we would break down, so summer of '27.
And how quickly would you know what your locked-in bond rate is?
So we wouldn't really lock in a bond rate until like 30, 20,
years.
2029.
28, 29.
Yeah, I mean, we might lock in, like, if they were favorable, you might lock in in smaller chunks. But we could continue to issue bans. The school's not gonna be rolled over probably to that 29, maybe, to 30, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Tim, do you want to ask a question?
I will keep quiet right now.
Okay.
I have
Jack?
one question. I had to leave the meeting with the selectmen and the finance committee people at Pomprog early. There was a very active conversation going on as I was going out the door, and I regret having to have left in the middle of it, concerning the training school as a single large piece of property for what has been your preferred solution. I think the words that were spoken as I was walking out the door was, well, there's 2 feet of snow on the ground, so we can't even go look at it. Well, there's not 2 feet of snow on the ground now. Has there been some reconsideration of that property?
I mean, we've talked about that property a lot. I mean, I think that there, it is, we definitely put in this packet here is, we asked the architects to go back and do a second analysis of that property, which poses a couple of different challenges.
Page 5.
I mean, it seemed that the district, and Tim was kind of leading the conversation, representing the property. We're almost talking about 2 different pieces of property, because there is a large flat piece of property, but one of the criticisms of the property, I remember coming from the architect and other voices, was that there was a lot of topography. Well, those 2 things can't both be true. Which led me to believe that maybe we're not even zeroed in on what is the piece of property in question.
So my understanding, and happy to be educated by anybody that has, well, there's 2 kind of parcels. There's the one that's already been acknowledged that the town of Southbury can develop, and then there's another piece still owned by the state. Our understanding is that the larger piece that's owned by the state is not going to be turned over. Again, that's the best information that we have at this time, that they're not interested in the bigger piece, that they're going to develop that. The smaller piece that we already have has a specific designation that we would have to have them change. That being said, that's the one known as Pierce Hollow that has an area that's flat, but it's not big enough to build a school without doing a lot of excavation around it. In addition, there's some other problems there with some historical artifacts, there's issues with grade, again, there's pieces on there. And then there's probably some differing opinions as to whether or not that would even be available, depending on who you talk to. We've heard different things, I don't know, somebody's right, but I don't know which one. And none of them are gonna be available in the short term.
Given there's a lot of different perspectives and maybe conflicting points of view, maybe conflicting assumptions, we shouldn't have groups with different, different baselines, different data. It might be useful to convene a small group of people that are knowledgeable of the training school property, the political environment, what's available there, and revisit that very quickly.
What's the differing view?
Well, and the other challenge is, even if they handed it to us tomorrow, the artifacts that are on there, the fact that there's a cemetery on there, like, there are other obstacles. If it was just, there's questions about ground quality. Again, some of those things are, again, somebody has the right answer. I don't work in Hartford, that depending on the group of politicians you talk to, you get different answers.
First question I would ask is, are we talking about the same piece of property?
I believe we are, the Pierce Hollow property. The other property has been shut down to us. The 200 acres, the state said they're not, at least the emails that we saw, were that they were not interested.
That's not necessarily true. So I personally don't feel that the Pomprog Elementary is the greatest site to redo right on site. And that's why I offered the 45 acres to the Board of Ed, Pierce Hollow. It's 45 acres. Existing right now is 13 acres right here on Main Street. I think the town of Southbury really needs to look at what's in the best interest to the town of Southbury. Everybody has their opinions. The east side of 172, which is state-owned, is over 219 acres. 45 acres of the Pierce Hollow site is relatively flat. There are questions on the other 219 acres as far as topography, but if you're currently going to build the Pomperog Elementary School, 7 acres, there's certainly 7 acres over on the 172 site that a school could be built on.
7?
I would just say that I'm not an architect. The architects that we've asked said that there are significant site challenges. Again, if that was the only property in town and we had no choice, maybe that's something that would be revisited. I think the question is, if we put it off for 2 years and it becomes non-viable, we do lose the window.
I mean, just a quick.
Steve and then Mike.
Yeah, because it seems, I hear the school department here, and then Mr. First Selectman, I hear you say, well, that's not necessarily true. So is there differing information, or is there more that that they should know? Are you guys are making this based on the information that you have at the moment, correct? Or that you were given when you planned all this out? If there's something new, but it sounds like it's kind of vague and unconfirmed, I guess the question is, if they want to make that decision, do they need confirmation that it's actually going to happen?
Well, as it stands right now, the 45 acres was rewritten last year from senior housing to multi-generational housing. That's 45 acres. What encompasses what is owned by the state is a total of 219 acres. That 45 acres is within that, and that's the east side of 172. It starts from the superintendent's building, and it goes all the way over to close to Traditions. It abuts Traditions, yes, yes. And I'm not saying it doesn't have its challenges. The 45 acres does have its challenges. There does need to have an archaeological dig done because there were some indigenous artifacts that were discovered on that site. But I'm sure if you're going to rebuild on this site here, you're also going to find indigenous artifacts. So there'll probably have to be an archaeological dig here also. I think that there's other land on that piece of property, 219 acres, that's sufficient to build a Pomperog Elementary School. That's just my opinion.
So my question again was, who currently owns that property? The state?
Yes.
Have they told us that they'd be willing to sell it to us for a school or give it to us, or have they given us any indication whatsoever that we'd be able to do this on that property?
We've talked to them, and in my opinion, they would be. They're not currently, they don't have any plans for that piece of property, and they are surplusing some of the vacant homes along 172. I think some of the indications that I got from state officials is they would be willing to convey other property to the town of Southbury.
But again, indications, they would be, perhaps, maybe. The information when they were planning this was that they weren't going to do that, correct?
I don't think anybody even talked to any state officials.
Okay.
Well, when the meeting that, and I'm not looking to enter the fray here, so I'm just, but the meeting
No, I
that,
guess my only question again is, to
meeting
the
that-
archaeological point, we don't know, right?
The meeting that
So
Mr.
we're
Kelly
going
was
back
at-
and forth between things that have been studied and confirmed versus I think maybe, probably, perhaps, we don't know, we need to ask, we need to check.
But you did look at Roxbury Road. That was going to be your site, right?
Roxbury Road, we did.
That's
look
the
at.
one you wanted. And now that's off the table.
That is correct.
And that's because?
We heard from the community that that site was not desirable to build a school.
Have you heard from the community? Actually, that's a better question. Did we do surveys of the community? Did we do any kind of groundwork? I'm not in any way disparaging the work the feasibility committee did. I think you guys worked your tails off. I appreciate it. I do think there's a little bit of a disconnect because I feel like I'm getting a lot of questions from people like, well, did they think about this? Did they think about this? I'm like, well, I wasn't on the feasibility committee, but this is what I've been told. And, that's, I think, the hard thing to wrap our heads around a little bit. Like, were there, I'm sure you considered everything, but I do wonder if a survey would have been good or, I know you did your presentations. I'm just trying to figure out a way where there could have been more direct engagement. And to some extent, you can't be perfect. You're not going to please everybody, but I'm still kind of wrapping my head around, because if you ask me, I think the GES and PES sites make the most sense. That's just me personally. I think you did the best call. I have no problem voting on this as a taxpayer and a resident. I don't love the idea of taking an official stance, though, because I wasn't part of those conversations.
Yeah, and I'll let the chairman speak, but the only piece I would say is that that indicator chart that you have in front of you, part of the reason we didn't necessarily, if we had two pieces of property that were equally viable, equally cost-effective, and, you know, kind of equally operationally made sense, then I think a survey would have been a direction. But when we went through that feasibility committee, like, there was kind of a clear choice in the end. Even the Roxbury Road one, we only did a phase one evaluation of, because we started it as a viable, but we never completed that because there was.
When was Roxbury Road taken off the table?
We took it off the table when we started getting lots of feedback from the community. There were some challenges with that, you know, the corner that it's on. But there were definitely multiple communications of, this is a piece of Southbury property, and then we were informed at one point that it was not going to be made available to the district.
If it was going to be made available, is that where we'd be building this?
I think at this point, the cost effectiveness, it'd be hard to go back now. I mean, we still could, you'd have to do a phase two. Again, I'm not sure. There could be things in the ground. You know, we didn't do a far enough, we didn't reach out to Connecticut Water to see if the sewers were definitely viable. Like, there were still challenges with that property that it's not like we had done enough due diligence to go down that path. So that was kind of the revert back to the known entity. We'd have to purchase the property, you know, as a regional district. Even the sale of PES would have to go up to referendum and be approved. So there's a lot of other steps that by building on the same site, you kind of avoid those things. I don't know if you want to add to that.
And I just want to add, yes, there was a little bit of a community uproar about us using the Roxbury Road property, but also, you know, our first selectman came to our meeting and said he did not want us to be using that property. So that really took it off the table for the Board of Ed. Even though there would have been, we'd still have to wrestle with it. It was definitely not a slam dunk to use that road or that property. And I also want to refer you to this page in the handout that's talking about the Pierce Hollow property that, you know, Mr. Smith was talking about before. So we had Tecton take a deep dive into this property to really look and see if this was a possibility. This, you know, 45 acres of Pierce Hollow that the state owns, the town doesn't own it. And Tecton Architects, a very well-regarded architectural firm that the feasibility study had recommended the Board of Ed to hire. They've done a number of school constructions, and they did a diagram here where technically, yeah, you might be able to fit a school and a parking lot that's completely right next to an active graveyard. And there might be some play areas, but there's no room for a field, and the topography is difficult. You also have to go to SHPO, which is the state historical artifacts. The Tecton Architects called the state and they said, you're gonna have to do a phase two study of this. It's gonna push that whole project back another year to do that study, right? So the Tecton Architects' recommendation was this is not a suitable property, and that PES was the better option. And I could tell you that as a parent, I think you're gonna have a lot of parents very upset about having a school site right next to a graveyard with huge monuments. It is active. It's just not gonna be a great, you're gonna have a lot of people very upset about that.
Would you say you have grave concerns?
I have grave concerns, and that was the nail in the coffin for me.
Oh, boy.
There were also some challenges with transportation in that both elementary schools would be on kind of the same side of town, so it could have some cost impact to transportation. I don't want to take away any of your thunder there, you know. But I mean, it wasn't that this was kind of settled on lightly or that we dismissed it, you know, out of convenience. We definitely spent some time, and if it was the viable choice, we would have put it out there.
Okay. Question, thought? All right, well, I don't think there's any more information that you guys can give us, so you're welcome to stay or you're welcome to go. Your call.
Actually, what,
Yeah, Steve?
I completely forgot, but I know people have asked me about it, so I'm just more like a messenger. But do we require a space waiver in order to get this 90 million? And will we get that?
So the space waiver isn't really about the construction. Currently, the state, when you apply for reimbursement or you go to build a new school, there's a
Yeah.
formula on the number of students and the square footage per student. And that's what they reimburse you on. Currently, both elementary schools, if we were to build new schools based on the state formula, would be about 15,000 to 20,000 square feet smaller than the existing schools. So the waiver is what we're saying is we want to build schools the same size as our existing schools, and we want you to reimburse us at that 65% for the entire construction, not just on the formula base. It's fairly common. It's not guaranteed, but it is fairly common. And there's a district that just got a waiver in this session that built a school 4 or 5 years ago. So it's not like if you don't have it, you can't keep asking for it. But it does take an act of the Senate and the House to pass it.
Where would you put your confidence level?
I am very supportive of the delegation that we have in Hartford, and I think they are going to do a good job.
I'll make sure, ask them next.
That's-
Thank you.
And we do get multiple bites at the apple, so from a confidence standpoint, I think that we have some opportunities.
Okay, we have spent our time doing this for over an hour.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you very much. We spent our time doing this because this is such a significant project. I personally thought the taxpayers in town should get the opinion of the people fiscally, the Board of Finance, to tell them what we think, and they're going to make up their own mind. They're going to listen to all sorts of things. We do know the economics as best we can understand them, given the reasonable assumptions. We're dealing with an average of $240, $270 a year for the taxpayer, $20 to $25 a month average. So really, I feel pretty confident about the economics. Whether or not we should make an opinion express an opinion as a board, we need to talk about. And my question now is, does anyone want to talk about that? I forced this on you.
I was gonna say, you just said we need to talk about it, and then you said, does
This on
anyone
you.
want to talk about
I
it?
don't want
You'd
to talk
rather-
about it now.
Okay? We have,
Because I've been, you know,
We-
you forced it on me a little bit.
No,
and
no, I
I'm
don't
in a-
know.
In a
I'm
room
gonna
where,
force-
okay.
why don't we,
And also, I'd like to hear, I want to go through the whole budget process with them first.
to do what?
I want to go through their whole budget process this year with them. We're going to meet, yeah,
That'll
we're going to meet
come
with
next week. Okay.
We're going to meet with them about the budget process. I want to go through the whole budget process with them.
It's Greek Independence Day. March 25th.
Given that, why don't we put this, we're going to, Dan, we'll re-put this on our April agenda. And that'll be an budget item, which is the revenue review. Does John's on the sheet, on the thing? There we go. Dan, you want to give us a minute, I guess, on each one of
Current year property taxes that we would expect to collect, and that is just the difference of what we have to collect less all of the $74,017,952. The motor vehicle supplement is, these are the motor vehicles that come on after we, prior year taxes are just the overflow of collections year over year, so we are anticipating about $320,000 for that. Permits and fees, last year we had a budget of $347. We did have uprights renovating, they were getting permitting for all of that stuff, so that shouldn't be around next year. So we're looking at a modest growth of from 347 to 383 on that one. The interest on our investments, this is the money that we sweep out year over year, month over month. So every day, we don't keep any money in our checking accounts. It sweeps out at the end, 5 o'clock at the end of the day. It gets swept to thousands of accounts all over the country, and it earns stiff rate. So this year's stiff rate was peaked at 4.7, I believe. Right now, it's at 3.7, and we're anticipating, based upon the Fed funds rate, that that's going to be somewhere around 2 next year. So we reduced that from 800 to 500. The interest on investments this is our IPOC. This is the investment portfolio. This is the gain that we're going to make in our investments, and we smooth this out over 3 years. So there is a tab here. I'll hit it, IPOC Investable. So as of February or January, we had $12,172,000 in the portfolio. The cost basis was $9,500,000. So we smooth that out at 20%, and then we take it in over 3 years. So if you see, this is the gain we had anticipated this year. We're going to take it out over the next 3 years at $255 each year. Next is just our miscellaneous. This is all the general miscellaneous stuff, which is like gun permitting and raffles and things like that that are in there. So last year we budgeted $401,500. Currently we received $243. I'm thinking that we're going to get about $410,000. So next year we budgeted $402 just to be safe on that. Park and Rec, this is where you'll see the increase. Last year we budgeted $450. The increase in their budget, we're anticipating they're going to have a revenue of $475,000. Senior Center, we're thinking is going to be flat revenue-wise because it's based on programs, and if we look at the programming, we're not going to make a lot of adjustments in programming. So we think we're probably going to be about the same there. State of Connecticut, these are actually grants that are given to us by the state. This is we get a letter from the governor's office based on his budget every year. So the 3 that are there are State of Connecticut, which is miscellaneous grants. Town Aid Road, this is the money we get for paving our roads. And ECS, this is the educational cost sharing portion of that. Telecom property tax, this is the property tax of the vendors that are up on our cell towers. So this is also dictated by the state. They come up with an assessment. And they give us this number every year. So last year we got $92,000. This year the state is telling us we're going to get $66,367 for those.
What happened with on that? What happened with our negotiation?
It's just how the state assesses what we have. We also have one less person up on the tower this year, Tom. So we had DirecTV up there last year, and they came down this year. So we have 3 vendors up there now.
Right, but wasn't there a question about our contract going forward on this?
That's actually in the miscellaneous, is the rental on the cell tower. This is actually the tax on the items that are up there. So there's a difference. We get about $166,000 in revenue on the cell phone tower. This is actually the real estate tax on the vendors that are up there.
Okay.
So town clerk fees, we're looking at $450,000 what we budgeted this year. Currently, we're at about $415,000, but we're starting to see a little leveling off in conveyance tax, which is the bulk of these fees right here. So for the last 2 months, we're seeing a little dip in that. So we were a little conservative in budgeting this. We kept it pretty flat to last year. Dog licenses, we're seeing an increase because we have a new animal control officer that's being more proactive in getting out there. So we collected about $6,000 this year in dog licensing, and we assume we're going to collect about the same next year. This $1.7 million is the portion that we take in from the unassigned fund balance. This 1.74 actually reduces what we need to collect, and it comes from the unassigned fund balance, so we reduce it from our collectible. The transfer in from private duty, this is the revenue generated by our police department when they go out there and they're doing traffic control for various construction projects or school events or things like that. We end up billing the client, and then in turn, this is the difference between what we pay our officers, the cost of the vehicles, and what we receive in on that. ECS is schools, so that brings us down to $89,337,199, which is the total of the expenditure budget of $89,337,199.
Versus which one was last year's? Like which line?
Last year was 84,012,739.
So we're up about five.
For about $5 million. Majority is in our tax collections, Tom, because you see the increase in the budget from 69 million to 74 million in what we have to collect.
Dan, I know some of these fees we can't control, but how do we go about assessing, since it does go to revenue, that we're charging the right amount? Because I always feel this way about Parks and Rec. Like, how did we decide how much it costs for an annual pool pass? It's still relatively inexpensive for a family. I know we want to subsidize these things because of quality of life, but on the other hand, we want to bring in revenue. So where's the appropriate balance, and how do we come up with that?
The majority of the Park and Rec programs, the Park and Rec puts together what the fee structure will be for each program. Now, the pool's a little different. We were getting some feedback that our pool passes were higher than every other town in the state. So last year, we made a conscious effort to reduce them a little bit to be competitive. But one thing we do want to look at is the fees we charge on everything. As we look at it, we are probably low in comparison to surrounding towns. So even like our building fees. So we are going to put an effort in this year to really look at all of that and get those more squared away to where they should be.
I mean, people are not going to be happy paying more fees, but I do agree. I mean, to the extent that if we're the cheapest game in town, I don't want, it's only fair. And again, it goes to our budget, so.
Absolutely. We looked at all of these fees, I think it was about 5 years ago. So I think it's time that we start looking at them again, and I think that this would probably be a good year to do so.
Thank you, John.
Steve, go ahead.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if anyone else. The reason John looked at me is because I had reached out to him earlier, with some thoughts about both revenues and expenditures as far as the budget proposal. To be honest, I'm a little less interested in the revenues. I talked to Dan about it a little bit because I did a little bit of analysis and, drew up something that I ran by Dan. Mine was just based largely on a lot of the historical data. And thankfully, we get so much of that from the town during this budget season. And, just on the revenue side, since that's what we're talking about, I looked at a lot of the revenue lines and tried to find some where I said, in my mind that year over year, it seems like we're well outpacing what our budgeted amounts were. And so I said, well, if we kind of look at that historical data, look at the history of not surpluses. Well, yeah, I guess you budget for a revenue amount, you bring in more, it's a surplus. And tried to say, is there some room for, rather than raising fees, to say, look, historically, this line has exceeded its budgeted revenue amount by, on average, we'll just say, throwing out a number, $50,000 per year. Would it be feasible in the budget to say, hey, could we budget for maybe 10 grand more? I know historical's been 50. I'm just looking for maybe 10 here or 20 there. It was interest and fees, the town clerk revenue, and then permits and fees were the three that I really zeroed in on. I know Dan had some thoughts for that. So, again, this is not one where I'm pounding the table. That's why I brought it to Dan, and he had some thoughts. But to me, that's one area where I think we may be able to realize some additional income, is to look at some of these historical numbers and take maybe a finer pencil when we're budgeting. But, I'll defer to Dan as far as some of the issues he had with some of the things that I ran by him.
Yeah, I look at it as interest and fees, for example. We're going to estimate about a $480,000 surplus in our revenue budget this year. 90% of that is going to be on the interest earned on our investments. And reason being is because we anticipated that there would be 3 rate cuts this year, and in fact, there were only 2. So that's where our stiff rate actually outperformed where we thought it was going to be, and that happens year over year. So it's hard to put a number on that based upon those items. I think if we look at permitting and fees, if we look at where conveyance taxes are right now and things like that, they are starting to dip down. So I don't think $10,000 would make it a difference either way in this budget, but I know when we do, for the last 3 years, when we looked at the surplus in this budget, we're less than 2% compared to what we budgeted. So
I think, yeah. So again, what I looked at, and I'm not saying the 2-year, that this was my mistake, and today I didn't have enough time to go back. But just even looking at, the last couple of years and you see, my thinking was interest and fees, the 2-year average was 372,000, I think, give or take. If you go back historically, it's maybe not quite that high, but still much higher than the 170. So I said, I was thinking maybe 205. I said, I'm certainly not looking at such a short time frame and having that average and thinking that's the typical amount. But I said, could we bump it up to an even 200? For the town clerk, again, if you look at those numbers, again, I'm acknowledging that just up here on a 2-year average is not a great basis, but you can see sort of the large totals versus what we budgeted. I said, could we do 20 grand more? Could we make that, where's the town clerk? Now I lost my place. It's 474.9. Permits and fees, same thing. I think the average over the last few years was around 384,000. We're budgeting, I think, where was it? We're budgeting, there you go, 383. I said, could we make that maybe almost an even 400, give it another 16,000 or so. Dan had his thoughts. For me, it was just simple data analysis. Just saying, look, it seems to me year over year, we consistently bring in more revenue in these lines than what we're budgeting. Is it feasible to budget not much more, but a little bit more and capture some of that historical surplus that we've been realizing? So those are my thoughts.
And where do the overages go, Dan? Like when we
All of the overages roll to the unassigned fund balance, Michael, so part of this 1,742,000 is.
are we deliberately under budgeting so we have more in unassigned funds?
No, I think if you look at this from a pure budgeting's not an exact science. So if you look at an $84 million budget, we had a $480,000 surplus. It's a small percentage. So, and the majority of that was in our investments where we did overestimate, but we overestimated based on the information we had on what we thought the street was going to do.
Let me offer a thought on that, hopefully put this in perspective. We are a zero-based budgeting town. That means we take every line item and we see what is it made up of, what are the dynamics that cause it to be what it is, what was it in the past, what might it be, or what do we honestly believe it's going to be in the future. Certainly, looking at historical comparisons like Steve has done should give you a place to go look to see if the budgeting assumptions you're using need to be challenged and should be changed. I think if we're gonna, so I don't like to take historical overages and say, oh, we've always had them, well, we're gonna have them in the future, so we'll cut for both expenses and revenues. That said, they do give you a place to go look. So I think if any of these we're going to challenge, we need Dan to say, okay, show us where you came up with $383,750. That doesn't seem to be something that came out of nowhere. And every single one of those numbers has that. So I certainly, Steve, we can and should look at how did we get from zero to where we are today.
Yeah, and if you get in the Dropbox, if you scroll down, you could see where we came up with the numbers and where the budgeting, where the actual is for every one of these categories. So that's where we come up with the numbers. Several years ago, when we were looking at this, we had our stiff rate, we budgeted 2%. And when COVID hit, stiff went down to 0.001. So we were at that year, if you look at our interest, we were off by $200,000, $300,000. So it does fluctuate, but it's all based on the market. So,
well, that one we understand the
if
science.
You look at, let's look at the for example, interest and fees. Interest and fees is the interest we collect on our prior year tax collection. Now, our tax collector is doing a better job of collecting the prior year services by doing tax sales and things like that. So yeah, 2 years ago we had 391. Last year, we budgeted 170. We're only at 135,000 through February 28th. I estimate 181. I think we're going to be below that. I think 170 is probably a fair item that we put in there.
And which is why I reached out earlier, instead of just coming tonight and saying, hey, this is what we need to do, make a motion. I figured there was some, more info in the details, but I thought it was a useful exercise regardless.
Let me ask it this way. Dan, are there, are there some of these where some of the assumptions we're using, maybe we could weigh in on? And, we think that next year's, Tom says don't bet against the Fed when it comes to interest rates. Should we be looking at, I don't know, you looked at what, 2? I don't know, 18 months from now, good Lord.
Yeah.
If you did it at 2, if we did it at 2.5, that's just our guess versus your guess versus Powell's guess versus Tom's guess.
And I have this data for the 8 years that I've been here, and we've been the first couple of years, we had a couple of higher fluctuations, but every year we're getting closer and closer.
Well,
Now, we're never going to be exact.
And I don't think we're guessing that anymore. We're using Fed funds futures, correct? Basically. And that's I think, the best market estimate of what we can do, okay, in that space. The thing, I guess, on the permits and fees piece of it, I guess my sense with some of that is that we've overperformed in part because I guess Darcell's office, or whoever's doing some of that stuff, has done.
We've had a couple of big things happen in town, like ShopRite this year, for example. We didn't anticipate them in the budget last year, but they had a couple of large permits this year, building permits and electrical permits and things like that. Last year, very similar, the Region 15, they did their pool project, so they had a couple of big permits there. So next year, we're not anticipating having those major projects, so.
And that was one I struggled with. That was the one, all 6 years, it was well above budgeted. But again, the flip side being some of what Dan said, it can be rather cyclical, depending on who you have in the office. We have Darcell now. You can almost see the after effects of the good job they're doing. There's not as much to collect from the past because it's already been collected. That one I struggled with, but I said, well, if it's been all 6 years, then I got to at least bring it up for discussion.
No, I appreciate it because I feel like we've spent a lot of time. Granted, I do not have a long history on this board, but I feel like even from watching at home, there's a lot of talk about the expenditure side, but we don't really seem to talk as vigorously about the revenue.
I'll get to those too.
Well, I guess, how do we want to proceed as far as the revenues and the expense? Well, let me hold this for just a second and move to the overview. On April 6th, we're going to have a meeting with the Board of Selectmen and finalize the budget. We're going to have a hearing after that, according to the new charter. Between now and that meeting with the Board of Selectmen, we have 3 weeks. During those 3 weeks, we can do anything we want. We can have a meeting with Dan to pick a bunch of these, I guess, and look at, do a deep dive into how we came up with them. We could do that if we want. Also, as to the expenses, we were at the department head meetings. We're going to have to decide tonight if there are any departments or any line items in the budget that we would like to spend some more time understanding, and set a meeting for sometime in the next 3 weeks to meet with the department heads and/or Dan or Tim to sharpen our understanding, so that when we come to the meeting on the 6th, we're not doing a lot of research. We would have done a lot of work, so we can make a decision that night. So, a couple of things. 2 things. Are there any of these revenues that we would like to spend some more time on and have Dan document the justification of how the numbers got to be the way they were. Are there any departments, any budget line items that we want to spend some more time on? And what date do we want to dedicate to go through that stuff? Thoughts? Tom?
I'm happy with the revenue stated up there. When I've talked about looking at the revenue side of the equation, though, I mean, I think there's some big ticket items out there in the wind that might potentially, like I've advocated, sell Volpe Rosen or sell some parts of Volpe Rosen, a smaller thing that I think might, it's going to be smaller, but it could be as much as 100,000, I think, would be set up a kind of nonprofit structure around a lot of things that we don't have nonprofit structures associated with. You know, like I've talked a lot about this of the ambulance, right? If the ambulance could raise money like the Pompano River Watershed could raise money, it would be, you know, it could make like $100,000 difference on the revenue side. You know, I don't know what's going on. I don't think we have that much influence about what's going on with IBM now. I mean, that's in their court, I guess, right? So they can do whatever they want, and we just are at odds with them. But I don't know if there's any kind of negotiation with them about how what they do with the property. But independent of these line items, I feel like there's some big ticket items hanging out there that maybe don't make a difference in this budget. But I'd like to see us talking about it by the end of next year at this time.
Absolutely, we can do that. Those are more the purview of the administration, but they're usually responsive to our urging to pay attention to something. Mm-hmm. And we can and certainly will do that. Right now, I'm focused on the next 3 weeks.
I know. And as far as this is concerned, I think it pretty much is what it is. I've gone through it too, like Steve, and I don't feel like there's any piece of it that I mean, what always gets me interested is the kind of what's hidden in that surplus drawdown. We saw that before. Like it's always kind of an ad hoc set of things. Like,
as to Tom, given that, as to the revenues, and I'm seeing some nods and some from the rest of us. Steve, could I ask you to make a date with Dan some late afternoon someday at your and his disposal during the next 2 weeks to pick a few of these.
I'm out next week, so we'll figure it
Well,
out.
whenever, you'll figure it out, so that you can pick a few of these, and Dan can show you what a zero-based budget means and how he got to that. So, and then,
But yeah, I'd be interested to see.
yeah, okay. And then when we have, certainly we have, even if we don't meet again between now and April 6th, we'll get to that in a minute, on April 6th, we'll have the benefit of paying attention to their study. Let me talk about the disbursement section. Is there any of the board members and the alternates, you're equal board members for this purpose anyway, are there any line items or things that you believe you need a deeper dive? You need a deeper dive than what we heard at the department heads meetings and what Tim is recommending. Jack?
Yeah, I think I'd like to have a conversation about headcount changes and the trends in headcount within the town government.
Okay. We have,
Which is not any individual department necessarily, but it's it's an aggregate driver of cost and benefit to the town, and deserves, I think, a separate discussion.
as far as next budget goes, there's only one and a half new people, one new person in dispatch, and a half a person, depending on whether you can sit in the, senior center, depending on how you want to do the accounting.
But I'm with Jack, and I'd like to see the historical perspective on it. You know, like the police presented it very clearly just for the police. It would be good to have that police-like presentation as a bigger kind of, aggregate number.
We have certainly teed that up in the benchmarking. We're going to spend $25,000 once we get an RFP out for a benchmarking consultant, and Jack has volunteered to work on the scoping of that. And as God is my witness, head count and organizational structure is going to be a cornerstone of that. It's more than 50% of the costs, much more than 50% of our operating budget. So maybe we can do that, and Tom, do the head count thing when we get the benchmarking study, because we'll have something to relate to. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But that's not a conversation for next year's budget.
Well, I want to pay attention now, so we all have an understanding of how we're going to pay attention to your concern. And it is within the framework of this benchmarking study, which is, quote, funded and is going to be in process. Okay, so that takes care of that. It just might be, folks, that you're pretty well satisfied. We've got a 3.6 something increase, and you're reasonably comfortable with that, given what we heard with the department heads. Because we're going to have to deal with a, quote, a zero-based concept in adjusting what they've given us. Steve?
Yeah, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I guess that was part of my thinking, and you had said this earlier too, when I started this whole sort of exercise, was this goal that we give of inflation plus growth in grand list, which unfortunately, going way back now, several hours to the beginning of this meeting when we talked about the grand list, and there was been zero growth, almost negative growth if you take out IBM. And so then you say, well, if that's our goal, then is 3.64 not well above current inflation of 2.4? And are we going to try to get down to that stated goal, or are we going to stand pat? I mean, that was part of, again, was my thinking. I had some line items that I wanted to bring up. I talked to Dan. He gave me explanations for several of them. There's two that I'm not necessarily sold on. But again, I mean, I don't want us to talk about our goal and say one thing and then fast forward to the end of the meeting and go, so are we good with this number, when we said an hour or two ago that our goal was inflation plus grand list growth? So,
Dan, do you have the chart we did at the meeting I missed, which showed a 7-year history on inflation and a 7-year history in the change in cost of local government?
I do.
Could you bring that up for us? I send Dan a lot of emails, as you can see. Okay, I want to make it a little bigger yet. And let's do the top part and make that bigger yet for everybody. And okay, this is, I think we talked about this a little while ago. This is the cost of local government increase for the last 8 years. And this is the December 31st Connecticut CPI for those same years. And here is the average increase in the cost of local government and the average increase in the CPI. And you'll notice there's a lagging effect when you have a lot of CPI. When the inflation goes up, it takes us some time to catch up. I don't know if we're still in that mode, I don't know. Certainly, was it last year, we went down to 3.14 from the 5.7. Oops.
I changed it, John, because our budget increase is 364 right now.
It's called real-time data.
Our increase we're proposing
Oh,
this year
I'm
is
sorry,
364. This was at-
3.64.
This was at the
Okay.
original
Okay,
budget.
fine, fine. So, but we're currently, as of December 31st, it was 3.3. If we take the January and annualize it, which I think is where the 2.4 comes from, if February comes in at 3, then it's going to be at 3.6. So we have to be consistent. We've taken the 12 months that we have a history on when we make our budget. That's why we picked December 31st. And because taking any one month and multiplying times 12, that shouldn't be a basis for decision-making. So I want to address Steve's point. We had down the bottom, it talks about the main places of where all this increase came from. We've got a 40%, this is 7 years. We went through this once before. We don't have to do that again on a 7-year basis. So we don't have to do that again. But these are we went down in roads and debt service, and the huge increase in health, and a 26% increase in wages and Social Security, which is consistent with the increase in which this is inflation, 26% increase over the 7 years in inflation. It's sort of interesting. The head count wages is right intact. So I bring this up to talk about, Steve says, are we going to accept let me call it 3.3, Steve, rather than 2.4, because I think the 2.4
2.4 was national, 3.3, 3.2.
This is Connecticut,
Northeast.
12-month CPA. We've got 3.64, and we're dealing with a 3.3. Got to do the devil is due. Dan and they've come up with, from the statistical point of view, something that's certainly not outrageous like it was last year.
Which is why, even if you take out some of the revenue things I was looking at, and this is before I talked to Dan, if you take the expenditure stuff I had identified before I talked to Dan, just the expenditure stuff, if we had made those changes, probably would have gotten us to about 3.25, which would have been right in line with inflation, and since we had zero grand list growth. After talking to Dan again, he gave me some explanations that I thought were pretty sound or reasonable. There were two that I'm still not so crazy about. Those are the two that I would probably focus on. But again, it was just looking historical and then keeping in mind that goal.
Why don't we pick those two? What are they? And we're not going to do them tonight.
No. It was the solid waste. I know the Board of Selectmen had already, made a reduction. I was looking for a little bit. I think the Board of Selectmen, was 30,000
Solid
reduction.
waste is one. What's the other one?
And then town property outside.
Town property outside. And revenues. Your revenue dive. What we could do, and I suggest we should do, is pick one night in the next 3 weeks and get the town properties outside, get the transfer station, whatever those numbers are, and we'll ask those department heads to come and talk to us, and we'll look at the zero-based buildup of those numbers. For me, that's what it is. It's all about the zero-based buildup. And it's going to fall where it's going to fall. And if does that make sense to everybody or not? Or are there any other departments people want to look at? Okay. So I'm not hearing any objections to that. Let's do this. Dan, let's ask those two departments to come. Steve, would you talk to Dan about the specific line items in the budget that you want to do a deep dive in? And then as far as the revenues, sometime before the meeting, we're going to set it in 5 minutes. You can get together with Dan. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah, I do have one other, while we're talking
Go
about,
ahead.
while we're talking about departments, I
Yeah.
did have a question about what was cut from the library budget. I know it was only 5,000, I believe, but I'm still not totally clear about that.
Dan, there's a question to you about the,
Library budget, I believe, was cut like 5,000, like, I don't know exactly what was cut or what the rationale was.
We looked, as we looked at their operating
services,
budget.
yeah.
We looked year over year over year, and they were a little bit over, so we ended up taking 5 out of that line to get it more in line with where they would be historically.
Then I guess I don't need to hear from the library.
okay, let's pick a date. We got to give you two some time to get together in the next 2 weeks. What about the first?
To Wednesday,
Okay,
Thursday
well,
this
you,
week.
By the end of this week.
Yeah,
do we have a calendar? Does someone have a calendar?
Yep.
Oh, look at you. I'm going to make you an assistant. Yeah. That's April? Well, we got to, let's do March, left and right.
April 6th is our meeting.
We are the 16th. What about April, what about Wednesday, April 1st? Is that April 1st? Wednesday evening, April 1st?
April 1st?
Does it work for? Okay, well, say again?
Depends on the time for me.
7 o'clock? Well, no, okay.
That's all right. 6 I could probably.
Pick a date that, who has it? Steve, what date that week?
Could we do it at 6 o'clock, John? 'Cause Steve could do it at 6.
If you want to, I don't.
Up to the
I don't
members
care.
of the board if they can make it at 6.
Yeah, I've got something at 7, so I don't know if an hour is enough.
You think an hour is enough?
The two.
I don't know, I'm asking.
The two departments we're looking at is the same department head, so it should be fairly quick.
We should be able to do it in an hour. You'll have the revenue build up,
Yep.
ready for us to see, and we'll have the two departments. So 6 o'clock on Wednesday, April 1st. That work for everybody?
Perfect.
Okay. Dan, you put a notice?
I will.
Okay. We also ought to tell department heads they have an opportunity to come and talk to us, but unless there's something that was taken out that they're concerned about.
And that would be the April 6th meeting. I believe they can come after the joint. I think they can come in that meeting.
Oh, is that the department head one?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then it's just going to be us on April 1st at 6 o'clock for those two departments and revenues. Okay, we good? We'll move on to the next item on the agenda. I think it was consideration of the request from the Board of Selectmen to fund a part-time person in the senior department.
In the social services department.
Yeah.
Can we get the agenda up there?
I apologize, at our last meeting, I didn't realize Board of Selectmen had already approved it. It's like they just have to approve it.
Here we go. Okay. Cell tower, let's do it, keep on the agenda.
We want to talk about the social services.
Yeah, social services.
Here is the,
Is that in the form of a transfer?
it would be in the form of a transfer. We would have to move from contingency to fund the position, which would be $20,000.
And want to read that again?
So this is the resolution. The Board of Selectmen has approved the job description for the social services coordinator position. This is a memo to the board requesting from our social services director to have an additional coordinator for 10 to 15 hours per week. And that would make the social services department open 5 days a week. So as we went through what it would cost to do that, it's $20,000 to
Now,
fill that role.
The $20,000, what's the annual cost of that?
That would be the annual.
$20,000.
$20,000.
So when would the position start?
If you approve the funding, we then would go out right now. to,
April
to
April
start-
1st,
April 1st, yeah,
2 weeks
to
would
hire.
be.
Yep,
So that's a third of a year?
yeah,
So that's $7,500?
yep, for this year.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to transfer $7,500 from contingency to the part-time labor in the senior department. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
So is there, what, excuse me?
It's social services,
I'm sorry, social services.
but otherwise, so moved.
So is there, we have a second?
Wait, just clarification on the math. It's a quarter of the year, isn't it?
It's April, May, it is, it's 4 months, yeah.
It's 3 months, isn't it?
It's
May, June.
April, May, June, sorry, it is 3 months,
Only
sorry.
3 months.
My
3 months.
error, $5,000, thank you.
5,000, yes.
Even better. So we're talking about $5,000.
Motion transfer $5,000.
What about the Social Security and workers' comp and insurance? Should we make it a $5,500?
Yeah, $5,500.
$5,500, including other
We
costs.
were at 7,500.
Yes, well, okay, we have a motion for social services for $5,500 for a part-time
So moved.
position. We have a second and a second. Any further discussion?
I just have a
Jack?
question. Is this a cost of having a 4-day work week?
No,
Tim?
Jack, currently our social services director works part-time, so this would fill in the gaps when she's not there and have 1 day of overlap, so they can do things like renter's rebate and energy rebate and things like that, where she needs a lot of help. So it would have full coverage in the office for 4 days, and then there'd be 1 day where there would be 2 people in the office.
Yeah, I'm just
So-
wondering, is this an additional cost because we have a 4-day work week and we want staffing on the 5th day?
No,
So we would be asking for this money regardless
regardless.
of the work schedule?
Yeah, it's the volume of what we're dealing with as far as renter's rebate and
It's the
things
same
like
amount of
that.
work,
Yeah, it's the
just-
same amount of work.
Okay.
Any other
There's a mo-
questions?
The motion already, second.
We have a motion made and seconded. We're good on that, $5,500.
Right.
If there's no other questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? So ordered. Next order of business, agenda, please, John?
I'll get it, John.
Oh, Dan's got it? Oh. My assistant. There you go. First Selectman's report.
I don't have a lot, but Volpe Rosen, just want everybody to know that I have met with a couple of realtors to try to develop part of that or sell part of that. It's open on the table. I think of the 200 acres, there's possibly 50 or 60 acres more toward the Ichabod Road that's more conducive to development. The big issue with that is there is no water source to it. So looking at Connecticut Water to possibly find out what the expense would be to get water to that area. The other thing is the 415 Roxbury Road property. I did see a lot of uproar on social media about the possibility of building one of the schools there. I wasn't in favor of developing that property, although I do see why it's considered. It does have water, sewer, and gas there. I did meet with Rural Preservation Commission. I would like to try to get the property preserved either with the Land Trust or the Conservation Commission. So talking to that commission right now, trying to find their recommendation on whether or not that could be preserved. My big thing is I understand building the grand list and taking some of the tax burden off of the residents is top priority. But that piece of property, once it's developed, it's gone forever. And I think there's a kind of a balance you have to weigh. If we do want to preserve the rural character of Southbury, that's one piece of property that I don't believe should be developed. So that's all I have. Talking to RUPAC and hopefully get a recommendation from them to preserve that property.
Thank you. Any questions of the first selectman about anything? Okay. Dan, internal audit RFP?
So we're putting out an RFP for our internal auditors. Our partner that was at CLA has retired, and I think it's probably a good opportunity for us to kind of test the market to see what other firms might be interested in coming in and doing our internal audits. So I wrote the RFP, I sent it to John and Steve, who are now and I believe John Riley, who are our audit committee. So just looking for any feedback of anyone that looked at any changes we need to make on it. And then we're gonna go out and hopefully have an internal auditor in the next few months. I mean, we are one of the few towns in Connecticut that does not only an external, but an internal audit as well. And we want to have a national firm to do it because I think it looks better for us when we go out to rating agencies and things like that, to have a name brand national audit firm take care of it for us.
Question, the scope of the audit, the detailed scope, do you think we're going to get a tight enough bid to deal with this scope?
I think we will. I think based
We'll
upon.
find out, I guess.
Find out, but I think we will. I think really we'll only get, some of the larger firms to bid on it anyway, based upon the scope that we have in here. So we'll probably just have CLA or CohnReznick or one of the bigger.
When we
municipal
first
firms.
did this 10 years ago, we went through this process. Our auditors at the time had a internal audit division, which was separate from their auditing division. And we told them we had $25,000 to do work. What can we do for $25,000? I would imagine we're doing a little different this time. We're going to find out what people might charge us with this scope, and then we'll pick someone. And then our internal audit sub-working group, which is going to be John and myself and Steve, will work on a detailed scope. And we will come back to this board and give you a recommendation about who we think we should have as our internal auditor. That's how it would work. Make sense, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Steve, that work for you? Okay.
Yeah, we think it's important for us in town to look at these departments. It's more of a way to improve. So we think it's important to do this process.
And again, we're only one of a dozen or so towns in the whole state that does this, but we're way ahead in a lot of ways, so. Okay, more later. Next on the agenda
So
is the
next
cell
we have
tower
Cell
proposal.
tower. We're going back and forth with the cell tower company. Last meeting, they were at 30/70. Right now, we're at 65/35, 65 for the town, 35 for them. Just want to keep everyone in the loop that we're still working on negotiating it. I think we'll even do better than 65/35, but I'll have more to come next meeting.
I think it was Jack last time that said, well, just tell them no, we'll keep it the way it is. Why don't we want to do that?
The only issue would be if they decide to then take all of the people off our tower, John, and move to another tower, which I don't think it's feasible for them to do, but that would be the only leveraging that they may have.
It's a game of chicken, I guess. How long is the current lease for?
20 years.
20 years? No, remaining.
Remaining 18 years.
There's 18 years remaining?
And everyone remembers, we got an offer of $3.6 million for that tower 2 years ago. We turned it down based on the value of that tower. We had a consultant come in and look at it, and the tower was worth
revenue
much more
value,
than.
yeah.
So we're still working on it. We're still negotiating it. We'll have hopefully better figures, and if we say no, we could play that and see how it goes.
this is a significant revenue piece for the town. I'm wondering if the Board of Finance should give the Board of Selectmen some guidance as to what we think they should do. Like, tell them to go find 6 pounds of sand and drive it into the earth, as Mr. Kelly might say. Thoughts on that?
Well, I'd like to have more background before I told them that. In other words, I'd like to really understand the context more broadly.
Sure.
In other words, you know, what.
What happened on this tower, Tom?
I mean, but I mean, can it just declare bankruptcy and then we're out, period?
No, because we own the tower. What happened was that tower, and to Mr. Dick Hill, who worked extensively on this, that tower, when that was put in, I believe, 40 years ago, part of the deal was we had a 30-year lease with the company, and after 30 years, we owned the tower. Well, 2 years ago, that lease came up. We went back with them. We own the tower. They're just managing the carriers that are on the tower for us. So they collect the rent. They get 10%. We get 90% currently. They're looking to renegotiate that because they're saying at this model, they can't afford to stay in business at 90%. From what I heard, though, they're negotiating this in every municipality in Connecticut. So they're trying to do a little better because it is affecting their bottom line, but it's also affecting ours.
How much are we getting at 90% from them?
We get about $165,000 a year.
165 Ed, 10, 70, 180, it's almost $190,000.
Yep.
Is the full value. At 50/50, we would go from, what, 165 down to half of $95,000.
Are you aware of other towns that have renegotiated, or are they all kind of doing the pound sand model?
In talking to our attorney, who also is the town attorney for Watertown, Watertown actually did renegotiate theirs. I don't know where they ended up, but I could find out.
Okay,
And I think they lost a carrier too, right, Don?
They did, yeah. We had 4 carriers, now we have 3. So DirecTV, actually, they came off the tower.
Okay,
But we
what-
want to
what's-
market it because we could maybe get another tower in there, another.
Like, in worst case, if they just say, oh, well, can't do it anymore, or we're out, we're bankrupt, what's our backup plan?
We actually could build the carriers for it, but then we'd have to, because they're also responsible for maintenance of the things that are on the tower, so we'd have to figure out how to do the maintenance as well.
And is there a contract we can?
Do other towns do like a municipal?
Most
like, do
towns
this themselves?
most towns outsource it to a firm to do it for them.
Well, when they're getting 90-10, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
if it's 50-50, it might make more sense for us to do it ourselves.
Yeah, we're at 65-35 right now, and I think we'll probably do a little better than that.
Or they can move the tower onto IBM's site.
Yeah. Where that tower is, though, it's what we found out from our tower consultant is where that tower is on 84, if the carriers came down off that tower, it'd be a blackout from Danbury to Waterbury in certain areas of 84. So
That
it's a
tower
valuable-
was my lifeline during that tornado.
It's a
We
valuable-
had
Not that
zero
we have all the
services.
leverage here,
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Well, what's at stake here? We're getting 165. If we go to 50/50, we get 95, and so we lose $70,000. And there was 35, 65.
65-35, so we would get
We'd get which?
65, they get
We
35.
get 65? Well, that's not so bad. So we probably lose $50,000 thereabouts from a 50/50 deal, or if 95, I gotta do this right, 200, 160, so, well, we'd only lose maybe $30,000 if we accept the 65. And then there's the playing chicken with them, and they might take it away, and I don't know where they'd go to fill that gap.
We would have to find another company to manage the tower for us, which would be the rent bills, collecting the rent and just giving us the
And
percentage.
they would, and we gotta make a deal with them.
Yep.
And they might, who knows what they might do.
Yeah.
I don't know, as you guys listen, does anyone have any guidance as to what we should be recommending to the Board of Selectmen?
Sounds to me like we need to know what the next best alternative is. It might be better, much better than this. It might be the 90-10,
Well, it also
Oh,
might scare them. I mean, it's always better in negotiating if you've got two players, right? Can we
Or
get another?
three,
Or
if
two or
you-
three players?
but
Can we?
That requires us to go find other
We have to
management.
find 2 other managers, which I don't think would be too difficult, because if you look at the siting council in Connecticut, we could probably grab 2 people off that and reach out to them.
Say that again.
Who's managing the tower on Old Waterbury? Who's managing other towers right in the area they're here? Those are the people that are gonna be lowest cost.
Yeah, I don't know who's managing those.
Could we
I do
find
know
out?
that the village is actually having Verizon, I believe, go up in a tower up there, so I don't know who's managing that for them. Find that out as well.
I think to Jack's point, the Board of Finance is saying to the Board of Selectmen, you know, before you make a deal, you ought to find out what other managers are available, what deals might we be able to make with them.
Yep.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and find out what Watertown or other
Absolutely,
towns have
yep.
done. If you can get that
Yeah,
information, it should be
Phoenix, who we
public.
have, has a lot of the towers in Connecticut, but they don't have them all, so we'll find out.
And if you can differentiate that our tower is more valuable than Watertown's tower, all the better.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay, so I think the minutes will give you a little guidance on what we think you should do. You're gonna do what you want anyway, for sure, and you need to, because you're the responsibility. But there's a lot of money at stake, and, okay. Financial statements, this is a consent agenda item. Would anyone like to take any of these out and talk about them, or are you going to accept what was presented?
Dan, is there anything we should be paying attention to?
Hearing no, I'm sorry?
No, I don't think there's really anything that is, if we look at the comparisons to, where is it now, sorry? If we look at where we are right now in the general fund, right now, as of February 28th, we're running an unassigned fund balance of $18,686,000. In 2024, we were $18,726,000. In 2025, we were at $14 million, but the $14 million was driven solely by the storm and the cleanup of the storm. So we're kind of fluctuating right where we were for the last few years. Other than that, our comparison of our revenues, you know, our taxes collections up, our intergovernment, which is money we receive from the state, is up. Our income on investments are up, but our charges for services, which we were talking about on our fees, our permitting, things like that, is actually down this year as opposed to last year. So our general government expenditures are down this year. The majority of that last year had to do the emergency declaration and what we spent on the storm. Public safety is up a little bit. You know, education is up. That's just what we had in our emergency operations, you could see, because this year we didn't have as much. This is what's left over of the library, for the $420,000 that we paid this year. But other than that, you know, we have a $2.1 million revenue to the better over last year at the same period, and I anticipate we'll probably, you know, be pretty much right on where we estimated, or very close to what we estimated for our revenue and expenditure surplus.
Okay, moving on. Next item should be transfers.
Or no transfers.
No transfers. Future business, we've set up a meeting for April 1st. Reports from liaisons. Tom, IPOC, anything?
We had no meeting. We got
Okay.
I guess, end of, was it end of February?
End of February,
update?
yep.
It looked good, but March has been a bear, so I don't even want to quote anything. So we'll know more about what happens at the end of March, I think.
Janet is not here. Nothing for Board of Education. Insurance Working Group. Dan,
We have a meeting Thursday morning, John.
Thursday morning?
Yep.
Okay.
With Art, and yeah, like I said, we negotiated all weekend with with our medical insurance, and we ended up reducing that increase from 12 to 9.5. We're still working on
what?
the other 9.5.
9.5?
Yeah, which
Oh,
is
wow.
pretty good if you consider around the
Oh.
other even private industry has been getting double-digit raises. We're 9.5. I think that's probably as good as we're going to get.
And that's in the 3.64
Yes.
cost of living?
How much did that save, Dan?
Say
It
again?
was about $38,000 off the budget.
Roads, Jack? Anything?
Reorganizing meeting tomorrow? Sorry. There's a reorganizing meeting of the road committee tomorrow.
Okay,
I'm gonna miss a part of it because I'm cooking with you corned beef for 150.
we'll be busy.
Where's your house?
151, Jack.
Huh?
Church, and you're
151.
welcome. Come join us.
We start
Thank you.
serving at 5:45.
AM? or PM?
RUPAC, the RUPAC, we had an organizational meeting. We have 2 new members, I think, correct? So we're up to speed. First Selectman is working on getting a chairman, and he's the chairman pro tem until he wrangles someone else to take the job. Energy Task Force, Tom?
We meet tomorrow night. We haven't met. We meet tomorrow.
Okay,
You know, I've got Jack, I've inputted Jack's questions into them, so we'll hopefully get that straightened out tomorrow night. But I don't think, I think that the solar is progressing, you know, vaguely in the background, but very slowly. So I don't think we have enough information really yet to answer your question about that.
About access.
Yeah.
okay. I think we've had enough for tonight. We are adjourned at 9:22 PM. We'll see you all on, what is it, the 25th? 25th at the high school.